Hi, welcome to the Paranormal Peep Show with myself, Neil Geddes-Ward, and Andy Chaplin. How are you, Andy?
Yeah, not too bad. Coming up to my hyper season, Halloween soon, favourite time of year, and I'm dressed like a pumpkin today. Yeah, it's going to get manic very soon.
Oh, we're getting to that time. The months are rushing past. Before we carry on, though, I'll introduce Monica here.
Hello, Monica.
Is joining my partner in crime. Is joining us this evening. She may disappear at any time, so if suddenly she vanishes. That's her. But she may want to ask our guests some important questions because she does know them a little bit. So I said, come along and sit in and see if she has any important questions. But I think the first topic of discussion initially is the Queen passing away. I was in the Orkney Islands visiting my daughter, as it happened, when the news broke. And my plan was, and it still happened that way, that I was going down after Orkney to Edinburgh to visit my son who lives in Edinburgh. So as the Queen was going to get taken, the late Queen was going to get taken down to Edinburgh, I said to my son, let's go and see this. So I said, I wouldn't normally see the Queen, when she was around, but this seems to be historical. Let's go and see her. And so we went to the Royal Mile, and we was tuning in via live feeds and that about where she was. And then we saw helicopters, so we knew she was close. And then I saw everyone put up their phone cameras. So I could see on their phone cameras some blue flashing lights, which indicated police. I thought, right, she's close by, although I physically couldn't see her. So I started filming with my camera and then got about 5 or 6 seconds of her going past in the coffin. Yeah. Then I thought I saw Princess Anne and possibly the guy that's really popular at the moment, which was a man used to be known as Prince, but it's called Andrew. That one. And the man that shouted out, Prince Andrew, you're a whatever, sad old man or something. He wasn't in our crowd. He wasn't in that crowd. I mean, I would have loved to have said it, but I didn't think of it at the time. But so what's your take in it all? I mean, how do you think that's gone? I mean, how do you think the nation's responded? Or what do you think from us kind of, I don't know. I'm not a royalist, but what do you think?
So here's my point of view. I'm fairly indifferent about it. I would prefer a republic personally, but I would not want, for instance, a Russian Revolution or French Revolution. I do not agree with off with their heads kind of thing. I mean, what happened then after the Russian Revolution was communism, which was just a bloodbath for 70 years, 80 years. There's no successful communist country that all. Are we allowed to swear? I don't know. S-holes. Let's just cesspits is a polite way of calling communist countries. So we don't want that. French Revolution as well. Their guillotines got so bloody that the blade wouldn't go down. So, it was just a chop. And all that happened was one lot of, aristocratic people got replaced by a load of other champagne socialists who just kind of chopped everyone's heads off and turned it into a bloodbath as well. So I don't want that. But what I do want eventually, and only really if the people want it, I think it's really down to the people's choice. I would like a republic personally because I believe in democracy, and I don't believe there should be any head of state or ruling party purely by DNA bloodline. But if the people really want a monarchy, then fine, go ahead. So I'm not really kind of staunch. And I say I'm kind of like indifferent. I didn't know the Queen personally, so I can't really feel that sad that she's gone. I can understand if people are very kind of like patriotic, wave the flag and love the royal family, then go for it. A lot of people kind of like on the news and when interviewed, they always say, oh, the Queen, it felt like the Queen was a part of my life. The Queen was part of my life. Okay, when was the last time you went round for dinner? When's the last time you had an invite? When you see those posh banquets of everyone being kind of served on by servants and all this lavish food, if you were to ask, can I be a part of that? You would be refused. So no, you're not really a part of the Queen's life. You think you are in a way that some people think that they're part of the lives of EastEnders or Coronation Street. You're not. You're just watching it on TV. So that's kind of my view. But I personally, Neil, this is how I kind of view it. I separate the person from the position. So I personally don't have anything against Elizabeth Windsor, and I'm certainly not rejoicing in her death. I don't, yippee, fantastic. I don't have that point of view, but neither am I particularly mournful because I didn't know her personally. What I wouldn't go along with, I don't know if you saw the Celtic or the Celtic football fan clip. There were fans actually shouting and chanting, "Clap your hands if you hate the royal family," and that was going on. I would not support that. There are certain people in this world that I would gladly clap my hands for if they died. The Queen is not one of them. Klaus Schwab, I can't wait till that guy pops his clog.
I'm sure we'll be talking about him in part 2.
Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, who have I missed out? All of the New World Order psychopaths. I can't wait till they pop their clog. That's when I'll celebrate. That's when I go get a crate of beer.
Do you go along with the David Icke theory that the Queen was a reptilian?
Interesting. Okay, so in terms of an actual shape-shifting reptilian, the answer is I don't know. I suspect possibly not. What I would say is this: is that in terms of judging how Elizabeth Windsor was herself and the royals her actually are as people, or reptilians, but certainly as humans as we know them, a lot of reports I've heard is that the Queen was actually a very nice lady and she actually treated people quite well. There's a lot of people that were interviewed in terms of having met the Queen and speaking with her, and she was always very gracious. And she also told off Meghan because when Meghan married Harry and went into the royal family right at the very beginning, Meghan was actually quite rude to some of the staff and probably did treat them as, Jeeves, come and bring me this, Jeeves, come and bring me that. The Queen actually told Meghan off for doing that. And told her we don't treat our staff like that. So from a human point of view, I think the Queen probably was a nice lady, but who knows what goes on behind closed doors and that kind of. I mean, I've heard stories, or not stories, incidents where people allege that there's kind of like human hunting parties where royals go out on kind of like horseback, and they're kind of like, it's kind of a Hunger Games type thing where they're hunting actual humans. I don't know. I suspect that's probably not the case, but who knows? So there's also an alleged thing, I will say alleged, where apparently the royals took over a load of orphans over to Canada. Have you heard this one, Neil?
This was a load of Native American kids in Canada back in the 60s or early 70s.
Yeah, and then they all kind of like went missing. Don't know.
Went on a picnic or something. Picnic at Hanging Rock kind of idea, but Canada. Yeah.
Don't know on that one. What I will say, Neil, and what is really blatantly obvious is that every single royal family in the world has either a reptile or a dragon or some kind of reptilian symbolism. So City of London, you've got the dragon. You go to the Chinese courts, you've got before communism, you've got the kind of the Chinese dragons. You go to South Africa, you've got the Zulus and the Chitahuri. You go over to the Aztecs and you've got the snake gods. You go over to Australia, and I didn't know this till recently, the Aborigines talk about the snake gods as well. Every single continent, every single royal family claims, and they all claim this, they claim a DNA link to the gods that proclaimed them fit to rule the earth. They all claim lineage. This is where the DNA lineage things, this is why families kind of like keep it in the family kind of thing, and why they're called blue bloods is because it's not so much iron in the blood, it's copper apparently. So it goes. So was the Queen a reptilian? I suspect not. Was there reptilian symbolism in royal families and perhaps rituals that do somehow connect with reptiles? Who knows? I suspect possibly so. I don't know how you thought about the royal wedding, and if you saw it, it was one huge Freemasonic style ceremony. You got the breaking of the rods, you got the orbs, and you got the crown. The crown is actually separate from the Queen. So the crown and the orb and the scepter were removed from the coffin and placed on the altar by the Dean of Windsor, I think it was, which was symbolic of the crown no longer being with the Queen. And then you got the whole thing of now King Charles with his cloth and the symbol, and some of this was being explained as it was happening, and he draped his cloth over the Queen's coffin to kind of symbolize, I think they said, the location of the monarch or the ex-monarch. It's hugely symbolic. And you've got the when the Queen was lying in state, you've got the three bangs of the sword for the changing of the guard and the changing of the it just looked like one huge Masonic ceremony. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. Like, I'm not completely anti rituals and symbolism. I'm just saying that it all very much ties into what looks like a Masonic ceremony. And this is where we go into things of what are they really either worshipping or trying to communicate with or trying to link with. And from my understanding, it goes back to ancient Egypt, the whole Masonic things, all the checkered floors, the two towers. That's a whole different story. We just had 9/11 remembrance thing recently. And essentially it all goes back to Egypt. And I think Prince Charles, or at the time Prince Charles, said that the royal family lineage could be traced to Vlad the Impaler, the original Dracula. But I think the symbolism and the rituals of it actually go back to ancient Egypt and possibly even before that. So yeah, that's
wow. A lot of digging then. I thought it was interesting actually. The commentator of the funeral said, and at this point, whoever it was doing the service will commend the soul of the Queen to Almighty God or something like that. I was thinking that's interesting. They're actually saying on BBC or Sky. I think Sky was taking a feed from the BBC anyway.
Yeah.
And the commentator was referring to the Queen as having a soul going to heaven or something of that thing, which I thought was interesting. On mainstream TV, talking about someone having a soul and going to heaven or some spiritual realm. And they're actually saying it in an official capacity and basically underlining that to the head of the state, the Queen.
Yeah,
which I think is very interesting.
But then again, I suppose you have got things like songs of praise, and technically the Queen was the head of the Church of England. So yeah, and it was in a church. So
yeah,
yeah,
it's all very, very interesting. Now, talking to people going to heaven and dying and things, will the Queen ever come back in a psychic reading? Maybe be interesting if she did, but I doubt very many people would believe her. But we might as well head over to our guests this evening, because we're going to be talking about that very discussion: souls going to heaven and maybe coming back and returning and imparting their wisdom of what it's like over there. So these people, I saw them demonstrate in the summer, but we know one of them quite well now, Jayne. So I'll bring in Jayne and Mark Hartshorne. Are you there, guys?
We are. How are you?
Yeah.
Hello, welcome. This is Andy. This is Nick.
Hello,
Hi,
This is
Andy.
Monica. And of course, you know us a bit anyway. So there's plans afoot with Jayne anyway. She's been seeing us in secret for sort of things that are going to go in the future, but we won't talk about that. But, we were just talking before we started recording, Jayne, about how we met you. And you'd actually forgotten this.
I had. That was a surprise to me.
Yeah, so I'll just remind the listeners, or tell the listeners how we met, is that Monica and I had been... Was it just us on our own back, or did we go with someone else?
Yeah, no, it was just us two. And we'd seen the amazing psychic Sally at the pavilion.
At the Weymouth Pavilion, yeah. And they had a camera guy on the stage. So if you got a reading from Psychic Sally, the camera guy would zoom in on you and your face would appear on the big screen for everybody to see. And I can't remember something that Psychic Sally said about something about smelly socks, blah, 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 on a radiator. And I thought, well, that's got to apply to me.
Pretty rubbish.
So I put my hand up and said, yeah, I can take the smelly socks, so no one else will have it. So anyway, she started giving me this reading, and then she said something to Monica about saying, you're going to get how many thousands of pounds?
21 grand.
21 grand. We're still waiting for that. Still waiting for that. So,
start playing the lottery now.
yeah. So we thought, okay, not sure about that one. So we thought we'd put it to one side. And then at the end of the evening, we all filed out into the reception area, and we came face to face with a lady medium that we knew, Janine. And lo and behold, that Jayne was with her. And that's the first time we met Jayne. And so, of course, we started seeing, and she says, oh, I saw your face on the screen. And Jayne, you said that as soon as you saw my face on the screen, you said my Welsh grandfather had come through to you and said something to you about Neil, carry on the artwork or something like that. And that's all I can remember you saying.
Brilliant.
And I was kind of gobsmacked, because I'm thinking, my God, I do have a Welsh grandfather, and how do you know that I did art? So your message was absolutely bang on. And 100% better than Psychic Sally.
Well, I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yeah. So well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
I'll be honest, Neil. I haven't heard, and you know, I'm in this game myself. I haven't heard fantastic things about Sally. I know we can have on and off field periods. I've done evenings where I've been absolutely on fire, and I've done evenings where I've been absolutely nosedived. So, but yeah, I haven't heard fantastic things of Sally. But hey ho, that's just that.
Yeah. So just to let you guys know, Andy is a medium himself, and how Andy and I met was a number of years ago. We actually met in a psychic workshop.
We did, didn't we?
I think we were one of the only two guys there, weren't we?
And I remember also that we did Michael Caine impression together.
We started to do funny voices to each other.
That's tin. It's not that they're looking again.
All the old Wurzel voices.
I've got your dad here, and she's got a message for you. All right, listen up.
And Shaggy from Scooby Doo,
We tried last night, didn't we?
All that kind of stuff. Because we kind of got bored, but our psychic powers weren't working very well that day, so we just started doing voices to each other instead, and making each other laugh.
We did.
So that's where our background is in that a little bit. So you guys though, you're both brother and sister. But Mark, if I can start with you, because I understood that you persuaded Jayne to take up this kind of field as well. So how did you get started off, Mark, in this whole psychic thing?
Well, it was a bit, we started together after Jayne had a baby that was born prematurely. So he unfortunately died. So we both went along to a medium, like a theatre medium, not Sally, somebody else. And were quite impressed, didn't get a message. And then it kind of helped us to want to pursue that. So we went to a spiritualist church in Paynton. And that was kind of the beginning of it, really. So we kind of trained together initially. And then Jayne kind of decided to go a different way, didn't you? And I used to say, well, you can run, but you can't hide, because I knew she'd always come back to it. So we kind of started off together. Jayne went off down a different pathway. I carried on with it. And then, of course, Jayne came back onto the kind of mediumship path a bit later on. So I kind of teased her, really. I don't know if I encouraged her back. I kind of teased her that she would, not be able to run away from it forever. So I was right.
So Jayne, you weren't convinced with the medium, the very first medium, but something carried on. You felt that did you believe it at that point?
I really did believe it. I'd seen spirits since I was a little girl. I just didn't know why on earth I could do it, or who did I think I was to do it. So it was very much a case of, to be honest with you, when you're 20, you don't want to, I didn't want to declare to the world I could see dead people. I wanted to go and be a hairdresser and do normal things. So it wasn't that I wasn't impressed. It was just, I think at that point, I didn't have any self-confidence. And it was just, who am I? Why would spirit want to work with me? I think that was more the point.
So when you said you saw spirits, that was when you was a child?
Yes, always have done.
Did you both see spirits as children?
Yeah.
Yep.
And did you see the same spirit and confirm with each other? We both seeing the same spirit in the room or something?
Yeah, we've done that before. Yeah, do you remember that guy, Mark? There was it looked like a captain stood at the bottom of the stairs in Embankment Road in Plymouth.
Yeah.
And we'd say, can you see that guy? And Mark would say yes. And I think that really helped us to realise we weren't mental.
And it was like a full form, full solid form.
Yes.
Did he was he what's the word? Did he acknowledge you? No.
It's
thing about playback spirits and kind of like interactive conscious spirits. So he was more of like a playback.
You got it, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And he was a captain, you say?
He looked like a captain to me. Imagine Captain Birdseye. That's right. That's what he looked like. So I sort of labelled him.
Something fishy going on there then.
Something fishy going on, but it was very clear. And then
me and Mark. Plymouth, so it's very naval, isn't it, Plymouth? It's all about the Navy. So
perhaps he lived there in the house that you were at.
Maybe.
How old was the house, roughly?
Oh, it's Victorian.
Oh, yeah. Definitely sounds like he was the old gent of the house or something, maybe.
Yeah.
This wasn't your first encounter together, though, was it?
No, it started long before that.
So how did it all start? I mean, what was the first thing that kind of like, it must have kind of disturbed you a little bit when you started to see things initially and not knowing what it was?
The first time was terrifying. When our introduction to it, we lived in a house in Hove in Sussex. And it was a very strange house, wasn't it? There was all kinds of strange things going on in there. I mean, the very first ever spiritual thing that happened to me, I think, was a radio. You know, in the 80s, radios had like big knobs, didn't they? You know, you had to really turn it to turn it on, didn't you? It wasn't like a remote control or anything. And I remember sitting there, and the radio turned itself off, but by the knob turning.
Wow.
That, I mean, well, I was probably about 12, 13 then, I guess, and I was absolutely terrified, you know, to see this knob turn itself off with nobody in the room. That was really scary. And my mum came back from taking one of the kids to play school, I think it was, and I said this thing had happened, and then she told me she too had stuff. You know, seen stuff and experienced stuff, and then I think we told you, Jayne, didn't we? And then like we all started sharing our stories of seeing, you know, I always remember there was the girl in white. Remember that used to come down the stairs and down the hall, and so you know we were all sharing these same stories that we hadn't shared with each other until that day. And so if I was about 12, 13, you'd be about 10, 11, wouldn't you? So. Yeah. Very, very young, really. But it was terrifying. You know, at that point, we didn't know what mediums were really. We didn't know we were mediums. It was really scary.
What was your percentage of, for instance, negative encounters? Because I'm well aware that happens versus either neutral or positive encounters, because they also happen, of course.
We don't do maths.
I know, no idea.
I would say personally, I've had maybe 10% negative. Usually trying to infiltrate my dreamscape, and probably about 90% positive, I would say. But I don't know what you guys feel. I'd
say the reverse for me, because it was so scary. So, yeah, you know, this every encounter for me was terrifying.
Looking back on it though, Mark, was it more the case that the encounters were scary rather than the actual enters,
rather than the people?
Okay.
I don't think it was helped. Our mum is a bit strange, isn't she?
Very strange, yeah.
So I don't think it helped that she thought the best way to deal with this would be to do Ouija boards. And so, you know, there we were, like literally children doing Ouija boards with mother to try and get in touch with the spirits. And the messages that came through were really quite alarming.
Just for any listeners at this point, we really don't advise doing that. Just don't. I've done a few in the past. I'm kind of not convinced whether they're real or whether they're psychological. But even if they are psychological, they are quite negative, or they are, as you say, the messages can be quite negative. We would really not advise doing that.
No, definitely not.
No.
Yeah. Different from our experience, we have to say.
Okay.
We kind of tend to think that if you do a Ouija board, like if you do healing or anything else, that you give yourself a form of protection. You know, and you know, you ask spirit to help you and those to close in and protect you and whatever. But and if you're doing the Ouija board, surely you would do the same thing.
I suppose it depends on who's doing it, really.
You wouldn't just leave your front door wide open and say, yeah, anyone can walk in.
We've had some very interesting experiences, very, very accurate, and nothing negative came through. And this was with other people. We won't mention names, but I mean, for instance, I may have mentioned this a few times, that my mum came through very clearly. Absolutely, everything was spot on. She would even interrupt what you were saying or doing just to say other things, like, oh, I like her boyfriend, and she was referring to my daughter's boyfriend. She just said it off the cuff without being asked. And I said, okay, you liked her boyfriend. I said, what did you call Morgan, my daughter's boyfriend? I said, because you got his name wrong. And she said, Stuart. And she had actually, first time she met my daughter's boyfriend, she goes, hello, Stuart, it's lovely to meet you. Yeah, I briefed her only the day before that his name was Chris, and Chris was going to come round and meet you. And yet she sort of says, hello, Stuart, lovely to meet you. And yet she said, Stuart, and she kind of laughed. She says, was funny, she spelled out, which, you know, it was typical. And I said, what was his real name? And she said, Chris. And so absolutely, it was her to a T. So there's an organisation, I only heard this very recently, and I can't think exactly what they're called, but I heard it on another podcast. They were talking about this very subject, and they said there's an organisation in America that is like the Ouija Board Association or something like that, and there's a particular lady that's the president of it, and I understood that she's to have said that it's largely upon your intent.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
So I'd like to find out more about that, because maybe find out exactly where we're coming from on that. But that's what I heard.
I think the difference, Neil, is you actually tested the identity of the person coming through, your mum.
Yeah.
So you knew to do that, but it would be you can imagine someone saying, "Who are you?" and it just says, "I'm your grandmother," and they accept that.
Yes.
Without testing. I mean, anybody could say they're the grandmother, couldn't they?
Yeah.
But the difference there is you were asking questions to kind of make sure that the person coming through was who they were claiming to be.
Yeah.
I think it is very much down to intention. So, for instance, possibly the reason why most Ouija board encounters are negative are possibly because they're kind of like the typical, slumber party, sleepover party, bunch of kids together. Let's have a laugh, let's freak each other out. Alcohol. And bring out the Ouija board, and because you want to screw around with the supernatural, well, the supernatural then screws around with you. But as Neil, you had a completely different intention, which was a kind of like exploratory and spiritual intention, that works out well. And and I think I'm right in saying this. The High Elms team, and all that lot, they run the UFO Academy. I believe they said that they did a Ouija board session, but they did it with the intention of spiritual enlightenment and stuff. And what came through from the spirits is that they said that us humans, we live in a reality almost like a goldfish bowl. And that from the spirit world and the spirit realms, they kind of view Earth and human consciousness almost like we can see the fish in the goldfish bowl, and the fish only knows the goldfish bowl, and it doesn't know what's outside of the goldfish bowl. This is kind of what it alluded to, which I thought was very interesting, and actually I think very true as well, that we have a very limited view of what we would call reality around us.
Well, if you think fish only have a memory of 5 seconds, supposedly they say.
So
if fish have a memory of 5 seconds, you could run that analogy along a bit further and talk about our previous lives, that we don't remember our previous lives.
Yeah.
Which in fish realms is 5 seconds or something, and so we don't think of ourselves as bigger objects in history as such, and it's only when someone taps on our fishbowl or takes us out of the fishbowl even, then we kind of understand that there's actually a much bigger sea, different fish, different creatures, and all sorts of things going on there. And because you tend to look back at yourself. If you're a fish, you tend to look back, and Andy's got a black tie now,
Yeah, it's good.
We know what you were in a previous life.
This is what
Oh, bless her.
The unwitting star.
What's her name, Andy?
Jessie.
Jessie, like from Postman Pat, I suppose. Yeah. So, so these spirits that you were seeing in your house, did they present any kind of feeling of danger to you, or they were just literally people passing through?
No, it was terrifying. It was terrifying. It was a full-on haunting.
Whoa. Okay.
Full-on haunting. I remember lying in bed I would have been 10, 11, and suddenly we had bay windows. The whole windows blew open all at once. It was scary stuff. It was designed to scare us.
Where was this, and when was this?
This was at the same house in Hove.
In Hove, yeah.
In the middle of the night.
Wow.
All the windows just blew open, the curtains come in. The previous people had reported it had been haunted for years. It was built on ley lines.
Wow.
I remember hearing a baby screaming from under the stairs. There was nothing there. It was horrendous, wasn't it, Mark?
I've never experienced anything like it. In all the years since I became a medium and kind of help people with haunted houses, I've never experienced anything like what we had in that house.
No.
Was it from
really
day one, or did it suddenly appear, or what happened? What kicked it off?
I think it's when they started redecorating the place.
Yeah, it was.
How strange.
So it'd been empty for a long time before we moved into it, hadn't it? And it was kind of quite old-fashioned, kind of like 1930s, 40s style decoration.
Yeah.
And of course they wanted to modernise it, and I don't think they were happy with that.
No.
It's interesting because have you heard about this, Neil? I've heard this a lot, where things are kind of okay until kind of decorations and things like get moved around, and then
it's almost like disturbing. What's that stuff? The stuff you're not meant to cut out of houses. It gets in your lungs.
Asbestos.
Yeah.
Best leave asbestos be, because if you start cutting it up, it becomes more of a problem.
Yeah.
It's almost like as if you left the house as it was, it probably wouldn't be a problem. But the fact is that some reason the decorating process has stirred it up.
Yeah.
And woken up people in some sense.
Yeah.
Did you
Definitely.
see what was doing it? Did it show itself?
In various forms at different times, though, wasn't it, Mark? You could literally sit in the living room on the sofa, and you'd see black shadows walking across the room. You'd hear bang, bang across the ceiling. I've visited many haunted houses in my career. I'd never seen nothing. You'd see. I got grounded because this girl who looked like me in a white nightdress used to keep coming downstairs. So my mum would come up and shout at me, "Get in bed!" I hadn't got out of bed. I'd see my mother pass my door in my mother's form, and I'd call her, and it wasn't her.
Bizarre.
So whatever was going on,
weird.
it wasn't for the good, was it? There
didn't feel like it. And what was interesting was we called in mediums. You got to understand, our mum is unusual, I think, is the polite word for this.
Bit of a psychopath.
Crikey, okay.
Give context.
Do you think it might be her energy that kicked this off?
I think so. And I think ours as well. You know, we were kind of coming up to teenage years, and I've often seen this, that when people become teenagers, they kind of have so much psychic energy. And that psychic energy, I think, was used to do some of the stuff, you know. So was it a dodgy spirit doing it, or was it the energy that was kind of, you know, moving things or making noises in the house? I don't know. But my mum decided to put a kind of request for help in the local paper, as you do. And so various mediums came, and nobody really solved it, did they? You know, we had the vicars in doing the whole holy water stuff. Didn't really make any difference. And in the end, I mean, I don't quite know where this medium was coming from, but the medium said the best thing you can do is move as far away from here as possible. Honestly, so they moved from Sussex to Wales.
Wow. Okay.
At midnight, for some reason. Midnight was important.
Midnight, a bit more dramatic. And what was interesting was the people who bought the house had kind of moved out 6 weeks later.
Oh, crikey.
So, yeah, it's quite strange.
So the spirits didn't move with you then?
Connected to the
They
house.
stayed with the house?
Yes. A lady across the road said to the young couple who bought it, "Oh, we saw your young girl at the window this morning," but they had no children.
Oh, crikey.
So they quickly moved out after that.
Yeah.
What was the last year that you had any contact with the house? Roughly.
84, 85?
84. I was going to ask, have you been back? Have you seen it?
Yes, we did. We went back 3 years ago as adults to go and claim our power back.
Tell us.
We didn't go in, though. We didn't go in. We
just pulled up outside
like burglars casing the joint.
Oh, right. Okay. Did you get any feeling from it or anything like that when you went back?
I just felt as if we were in control this time, and the house just looked tiny and small and non-anonymous anymore. It didn't look scary anymore. But it was the most terrifying place as a child. But as a woman, I stood there and I just thought, gosh, you know, I think we were the powerhouse behind that.
It just looked like an ordinary house in an ordinary street, didn't it, when we were adults? But yeah, as children, it certainly wasn't that.
But of course, without that, we wouldn't have gone into doing what we're doing. That was just
maybe that kick-started it. I mean, the Enfield poltergeist was very much like that.
Yes.
Something like 956 Green Street, I think it was.
That's right.
That was just a very kind of like ordinary kind of terrace house. It's now got some kind of Jesus church thing that own it, because there's lots of Jesus loves you signs and rainbows and things in the window.
Oh wow, okay.
So yeah, I think that came out of Ouija board use, or one of the girls went to like a church and laid on a grave or something like that, and that kind of kicked things off a little bit. So it does seems like there's like some kind of adolescent springboard that makes.
I think there is. What was strange was we moved all these hundreds of miles away to West Wales, and moved into this old blacksmith's cottage. I mean, it was about 200 years old, and it
sounds even scarier.
For other reasons, it did become scarier. But this cottage had a barn next to it. The blacksmith used to do the blacksmith, stuff in, and so we went in there, and it's literally as soon as we moved in, and there was this little old blacksmith stood in the corner. So I got all that way to escape the spooks, and there was one barn straight.
I was going to say, if I was fleeing a house because of a haunting, the very last place I'd go to is a 200-year-old blacksmith building in Wales.
Mum to understand.
It's got it written all over it, hasn't it? Really.
Don't come in.
So it got worse at this other place. So what sort of things happened at this other place that really spooked?
Not of a spiritual nature.
Oh, okay.
Things got worse because we had a very kind of problematic childhood with lots of abuse and stuff. So it got scary for that reason, not because of spiritual reasons.
Right.
What was the
Go on, Andy.
What was the road in Hove? Because I absolutely love Brighton and Hove, and I go there quite a lot, and I want to check it out.
Check it out now.
Number 3 Elm Drive.
Number 3 Elm Drive.
There'll be loads of people now.
Yeah, go and have a look.
Go and have a look on there now.
I have Googled it, and there's nothing. There's no stories or reports or anything.
There is in a book, though, isn't there? I think it's called Something Supernatural in Brighton and Hove, because you remember that guy published the story. There is one story. Yes.
Oh
my
God.
It's in there then.
Fantastic, is that?
They called it the Stopford family, Stopford, and that's our story in one of them books.
Yeah.
And it's just showing some paranormal
books,
focusing on Brighton and Hove for those that are listening on audio. That's why we're
definitely in one of them because I've seen it.
I can also highly recommend the Brighton Ghost Walk. Anyone listening on the south coast of England or any kind of people flying in from America who might be visiting Brighton, have a Google for the Brighton Ghost Walks. They're fascinating. There's a lot of crazy things going on. If anyone does know of number 3 Elm Drive in Hove, or knows the owners or knows the area, do let us know. Do message the show.
Yeah, it'd be amazing.
Because we'd love to know and add it to our little Paranormal Peep Show.
Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah,
exactly.
Pretty much.
It's a bit like
so. Yeah. I was wondering whether the fact that you said it all started off when it started to be redecorated, as if the original owners, because presumably their point of view is that they still own the house, and what are you doing to their property? And they're getting a bit peed off with it because you're papering over their wallpaper, their house, you're intruders, that kind of thing. And that kind of seems to be that sort of thing that it's, for some reason, they're earthbound. They haven't gone on to the spirit world. I mean, what were your thoughts on that? That they're still trapped there or something?
I think they choose to stay. I don't think everyone gets trapped. I think it's a conscious choice on when we our choice when we pass. If you think about it, imagine like somebody's really obsessed with money on Earth and they can't bear to leave their wealth behind, so they'll choose to stay. But everyone is given the option to go home, as I call it. I think some people are just so bloody minded they'd rather stay, and maybe they didn't believe in heaven. Maybe they were, of a faith that really thought they were going to hell. Why would you make that journey if that's your outcome?
I've had that in haunted houses where people are too scared to go on because they fear judgment. They don't want to leave Earth because they're going to face the wrath of God, and if they think they've done something wrong, they could go to hell. So they just stay where they are.
Wow.
Loads of times I've had that.
It shows a kind of an effect that religion can have on people, how it can limit people's perceptions, like the fishbowl perception we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's almost too controlling, and yet
that's exactly what it is, isn't it? It's a control measure. Keep people compliant.
I mean, some religions might be more liberating and sort of say no, there are many heavens, and they might explain about it, like spiritualism. I'm not sort of saying spiritualism is totally right, but it kind of gives you a bit of a broader perspective on things about maybe it's not quite as the Bible says. Maybe there is a afterlife or something like that. So as you grew up and you became sort of more mediumistic, how did you hone your skills? Was there a specific method? Did you go to a medium for training or a development school or something?
Go on, Mark, you can have that.
It was, as I said earlier, through the spiritualist church. So we went to 2, didn't we? Paynton and Newton Abbot, both in Devon. And we really I think we came on really well there, didn't we? Because we had a lot of time and attention given to us. I think especially at Newton Abbot, the people there could really see that we had some potential, so they kind of really nurtured that, didn't they? On
Friday circle, night, wasn't it?
Yeah, in a circle, and kind of just started doing it there, really. And then you practice by giving little messages to each other in the circle, and that all went really well, didn't it? And
we just found it really easy, didn't we?
Yeah.
Whereas other people were taking months and months and months to get anything. We were just going bang, 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 and people were responding to us, and it was like, what? Yeah, couldn't believe how easy it was. Couldn't believe how easy it was.
That was my experience as well. I'd sit in a circle, and there'd be some people I'm getting red
every week for 6 months.
And I was getting I'm getting boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
I always remember, because I was told by various mediums at like the College of Psychic Studies or the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain. I'd gone up there in my early years, teen years, and they all kept saying to me, by the way, you're psychic. And I kept thinking, but I don't see ghosts. What's going on here? I couldn't understand it. So I started to go to this spiritualist association in Uxbridge, and they did announce that they did have a developing circle, not long after I'd started there, really. They said they got a developing circle, and if anyone wants to partake in it, please come up and register your interest. So I went to the guy on the counter and I said, please, can I come to your psychic circle? So they wrote my name down, said, oh, it's Thursday evening, 8 o'clock, here's the address, blah, blah, blah. So I started to go, and after about maybe 3 weeks there, one of the exercises was concentrate upon the person sitting opposite you in the circle, try and meditate them and see if you can get any information about it. So I thought, okay. And I remember almost going into almost a slumber sleep, because I'm not very good at meditating. I think I'm almost drifting off to sleep. But I remember, this is the first thing that kind of really convinced me that, my God, something's going on here. I remember distinctly, like in a dream, you hear someone talk to you. I remember hearing voice talk to me inside, not externally in the room, but inside my head.
Yep.
And it was a Cockney accent of almost like a cabbie driver of the East End of London type of accent. And it said, because I was concentrating on this guy called Eric sitting opposite me, and the voice said, tell him he's got something wrong with his waterworks, like that. And I remember going, what's going on here? I thought, oh my God. And so I kind of woke up out of my slumber and thought, bloody hell, what was that all about? So I thought, how do I say this to this guy that he's got something wrong with his water in front of all these other ladies that are there? They're going to choke on their cucumber sandwiches or something. And so I thought, I've heard of mediums wrapping up messages. So I thought, I'm going to have to wrap this message up. And I said to him, oh, I've got this message. And I kind of blumbered my way through it saying, I think you're seeing a doctor about a medical issue. And he goes, oh, yes, that's quite right. That's quite right. I mean, that could have applied to many people. I understand that looking back on it. But I really, young age, I didn't really understand how to frame it.
Yeah.
But I remember then talking to a friend of mine, like maybe the next day on the phone, who was much older than me. And he said, oh, he's probably got prostate trouble. And I said, what do you mean? What's that? And he explained a prostate is what men have. And when they get older, it makes them go to the loo sometimes because it gets larger. And I said, God, I didn't know that. So, having trouble with your waterworks was quite applicable in hindsight. And whoever this guy was from the East End, I wish I'd described the voice to the guy now. But again, I didn't think of that at the time. It's just an experience. But that taught me in a sense that, yes, there is the ability to have this psychic ability. And the other thing was that I was getting it. I was starting to pick up stuff, and yet other people couldn't get anything for toffee.
No.
And it's like they're just not the right people to be in the circle.
Do you think it's again what we're going to the second half, but it's levels of consciousness we're talking about here, isn't it? So if your consciousness is a bit higher up the ladder, if you want to look at it that way, it's so much easier to tap into home. Whereas if we're still thinking, oh, am I worthy? Am I good enough? What time's he sent us on? We're not tapping into that higher energy. So you obviously got it. And I teach my students when we get that, say it and sod it. It's not for us to, oh, I can't use the waterwork word. Say it and sod it. That's how we land our messages. Sod it. That might have been, yes, it's clever stuff, but we can all do it. But it depends on what level of consciousness we're on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wonder why some people don't get it. I mean, from what you were saying, Neil, there was when I was in my circle in Hoddesdon, there was a little guy called Von, bless him, and he was a little chap, and I swear through all of the circles that we did, which was quite a lot, over a period of whatever it was, how long he was there for. I think he was there for about a year or so. He didn't get anything ever, and he would sit there and even like some of the little old ladies, bless them, who they'd get something, they'd get a flower or they'd get a dog, and we'd ask little Ron, we'd say, Ron, what did you get? No,
nothing. It's
well, you must have got a colour. No, didn't get a colour. You must have got a word, a flower, an animal. No.
Well, there was that guy that we met at Spiritualist Church here. We sat in a circle once with this guy. He's the old guy that used to chase your friend.
Oh yeah.
And he was a really old retired guy. He I don't know, he was quite keen on Monica's friend, and he used to sort of try and walk her home and stuff, and stalk her. Yeah. But I remember being in the circle with him once, and he said, so why are we doing this then? And I said, what? When you come in this circle, I'm thinking, what do you mean you keep coming in this circle and you're asking me now why are you doing it? And I said, well, to try and develop mediumship. He says, but why? Why do we want to do that? And I thought, oh, you're just definitely here for the women, aren't you? That's what it is.
Yeah. God. I remember I did a demonstration of mediumship in Dorchester one night, and it had gone really well. I'm finishing up and going out, and this bloke stopped me and he said, what was she doing? What was she doing? And he had no clue where he was or what he was doing there. His wife made him, and he's just like, I don't know what he was talking to.
Yeah.
I got
Maybe it was a spirit, and you thought it was a person.
I don't know. Just think, why would you go to something you don't know what you're going to? It's God help us. But yeah, funny folk, isn't it?
Mm.
So talking about when people come back to you, you know, and there's obviously people that have not got a clue about this kind of thing. I remember reading in I think it was a book by Leslie Flint, or about Leslie Flint, who was the trance medium that had direct voice. And the book I read where people would come back through this kind of ectoplasmic voice box in the room. You could actually hear them, anyone. You didn't have to be a psychic. You would just hear this vibrational voice coming through in the dark. I think the book was called Voices in the Dark, actually. And a lot of the people that came through said, why wasn't we told this? You know, they were surprised to find themselves still existing on the inside, but they said, why wasn't we told about all this? You know, so do you get people that come through that were skeptics, maybe, that sort of say, I mean, what's your experiences of people that have found themselves to be dead and been really surprised that they still exist?
I've had a few. I had one last week, actually. There was a husband come through for his wife, and I always get a vibe that they're a bit skeptical in this. You know, he's just sitting there, and I'm almost pulling him towards me, and that always gives me the impression that husband might not have been a believer. But then they always say, "Well, I am now." They can't dispute it now. They're communicating with a medium, but I always sort of get the impression they wouldn't have done this in life. You wouldn't have got them in front of me in a million years. But when they get there, they can't dispute it anymore.
Yeah. And what about you, Mark? Have you had similar sort of things?
Yeah, exactly the same, really. That sometimes they will say to me something like, you know, well, I would have called you a nutter, you know, when I was alive, you know, talking to me, which kind of then gives me the impression that they were skeptical or didn't believe, and then I'll pass that on to whoever the living person is. So it's just like, you know, I want them to be real with me, just as they would have been when they were on Earth. So if they would have said, God, you're mad, I want them to say that too. Do you know what I mean? Because then I can pass that on in a really real way to the person that's alive. But yeah, I've had it loads and loads over the years. You can't deny it, can you, once you're there? Yeah, this is slightly separate, obviously, to what we were just talking about with spirits that don't move on because they're afraid of judgment or whatever. We're talking now, aren't we, about people that do know that they've died, they've passed over, they're a bit gobsmacked, and they're coming back to say hello to their loved ones. So these people know they've died, they know they're in the spirit world.
Yeah.
Talking of skeptics, Mark, there is a slight irony. You look almost the absolute identical twin of Richard Wiseman, the parapsychologist, ultra skeptic guy. It's actually he's close to me. He's in the University of Hertfordshire in Hatfield in the psychology department, and he's done stuff. He's got the same glasses.
That's that. We should get them on together.
That's strange.
That'd be an interesting discussion.
It would.
So, how did you two end up? I mean, obviously you grew up together, but I mean, I know that Jayne's done her own demonstrations with other mediums and things like that, and then more recently, I mean, I don't know if you've done this before, but we've only started to see you recently around this area of Dorset working together. Is that something that's only just started, or have you been doing this a long time, working the circuit, as it were?
Both.
As a group, I mean.
Together, we've done it about 30 years.
On and off.
30 years. We started off working together in a very small house in Paynton because we were both a bit terrified of it. So we used to charge people £5, and we'd work for hours. And Mark would do the first afternoon, and I'd do the second. So yeah, and then we hired tentatively a little town hall. And then we built up from that. And then both lives get busy, so we have a few years off. Then we come back. But there's no one I'd rather work with than my brother.
Yeah,
it's easy flow, isn't it?
Yeah, we know what to do, how to do it, and
it's seamless when we work together. It's easy.
But the distance as well, you know, like obviously I'm in Devon, Jayne's in Dorset, so the geography makes it difficult to do more together. I think we would if.
Oh, there he is. Look, Mark.
Oh yeah, it's a similarity.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. I forgot what I was saying there. But yeah, I mean, because and time as well, you know, it makes it very difficult. I mean, I literally have worked all over the world doing it. I've worked at SAGB that you were just mentioning in the College of Psychic Studies. I've been to Japan, America, Europe. So, you know, like I was doing that on my own. I think at that time I was waiting for Jayne to stop running away and coming back to me. So
how do the Japanese people take spiritualism and psychics and mediums?
Well, it was very interesting, but I don't know, to be honest. What my experience was, all they wanted to know about was what they'd done in their previous lives, because of course in Japan it's all Buddhist. Their religion is Buddhism or Shinto, so most people are Buddhist. So it's like they weren't really that interested in what their relatives might say, more about what did they do in a past life and what do they still need to learn. All they seem to care about is past lives and learning.
Interesting.
It was a very strange experience, of course, not speaking a word of Japanese.
So you had a translator, presumably, working with you to have to sort of translate what you were getting as impressions through. That must be quite a feat of gymnastics, really, isn't it? Yeah, wow. And it's interesting.
It was exhausting because all the things in English that we use, like phrases that we use and understand, like, you know, someone who's really down to earth, salt of the earth, you know, actually means nothing. So all of those phrases that I would ordinarily use to describe someone had to be rethought, because what's the translator going to do with that? Like, this is somebody who is salt of the earth. So everything had to be put into really plain language. So it was so knackering, rewording everything for the benefit of the translator.
Getting back to the goldfish, you could say they're a very salty fish or something. You know?
Yeah, could have done.
That's more Japanese. Interesting on the Japanese front is that when they've done kind of like broad tests of people having near-death experiences, you know, in this country and in the West, we tend to, the reports say anyway, that we will pass out of our body and go through a tunnel of light or something like that. In Japan, for some reason, they find themselves, when they go out of their body, they don't go through a tunnel of light. They find themselves tending to a garden. Isn't that weird? They're all in a garden digging flowers or something, you know, very, very Japanese style, which is, it shows it seems to be a kind of cultural perception of where you're going to go or what's going to happen to you. Or you might end up in the same place, but it's going to be culturally structured to your idea of the way of things, I suspect.
It absolutely has to be, otherwise it's going to be a bit freaky, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It has to be some sense of familiarity, even if it's like some sort of illusion on your spirit mind or whatever you want to call it. Have you had any out-of-body experiences, any of you?
Jayne has.
I died once and come back. That was interesting.
How did that come about? I mean,
I'd had a miscarriage and they gave me a D&C, but they'd infected me while I was on the table, so they sent me home. And I remember going to bed that day, not quite right, and a lot of pain. And my little boy, who was 2, was in bed with me at the time. And I was in such pain. I come up out of my body. I looked down at myself. I could see myself very clearly. And there was like a pull towards this light. And it was intoxicating. I wanted to go. It was peaceful. It was like, come on. And I was going to go. And something about me said, if you go, you're going to leave Jack behind, my son. And that was enough. I come back into my body. And as I come round, they were giving me an injection. And the ambulance man said, we lost you there, Jayne. So for me, if that's dying, come on, there ain't nothing to worry about. It was the most peaceful, loving experience I've ever had. It was, it gave me gusto to do the work again. It was amazing.
Lots of people that have OBEs do say that. Don't
they? They say it's very difficult to come back.
You don't want to come back to this vibration, this heaviness. Why would you want to come back to it? It was like, oh, but Jack, the love for my son brought me back without a doubt.
Wow. So when you're sort of talking to these spirits, mediums tend to see things as images in the mind. Sometimes voices. How does it work for you guys? Do you just see all three, like hear voices, see images or feelings? What's the predominant factor that communicates that something's coming through?
Go on, Mark, you can go first.
Don't hear anything. It's images in the mind's eye and feelings, like clairsentience. So I feel things. and an image, but sometimes the image that I'm shown may not actually be the right thing. So it could be like, you know, I'm just shown an old-fashioned car, for example. So it may not be the old-fashioned car that somebody had, but it will just get me to say old-fashioned car.
Yeah.
So, you know, the images aren't necessarily 100% accurate to the specific thing. So it's more these images that help me to portray the message, and like a feeling. Sometimes, like, I'll get a physical pain in my chest if someone had a heart attack, or I'll get like a gut feeling if I feel this is someone's mum or someone's grandmother. So it's very much working with feelings and energies and visions, I think.
I could back up the visions thing and getting you to say things. The other day I did a night in Abingdon, and I saw an image of Les Dawson. And the person that was communicating wasn't Les Dawson, but it was a man called Les.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah, but it was to get me, because I know Les Dawson.
Yeah,
Les Dawson looks like. It was to get me to say the word Les.
You got it. Yeah, I did an evening once in a town hall, and there was a picture of the Queen on the wall, and I thought, oh, so you've got to be quite quick-brained with this, haven't you? Because everyone's looking at you. So I knew it must be Elizabeth, and the woman I was talking to was called Elizabeth. So spirit will use anything and everything in our memory bank or around us to get the message through.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to the earlier, it could be that people don't get this because they're not quick-brained enough. It's got to be quick. That the information comes through so quickly to me. Sometimes it just feels like it's just passing through my mouth without me having any input.
Yeah. I think you've got to be very quick. I remember, I think it was at Weymouth Spiritualist Church, actually, and there was in my mind's eye was a packet of those old-fashioned. Do you remember the salt and shake crisps?
Yeah,
a little blue packet in, and
yeah. And I wasn't. My mind couldn't get there quick enough. I'm like, why the hell? This person like crisps? Did they only like plain crisps? What was it? Because it turns out that and I think the member of the audience actually helped me with this. So I said, I just do not know why this packet of crisps then. And they said, well, it could be because they were called Smith. And of course, I was seeing the Smith's crisps, but I've gone down the line of the salty thing. Do you know what I mean? And it was like really complicated, that one. But yeah, I couldn't get that quick enough. So the person helped me out with that.
Because Andy, you had an interesting one where you was doing a reading and you got someone's cat come through, didn't you?
Someone's
Do you remember
cat?
The name of the cat, and they said, "Can you get its name?" And you suddenly saw it. Wow!
Train.
A ghost train, everybody.
Did it?
A ghost train or a real
one? Where did that come from? What was that about?
That's me. I keep outside,
I don't remember the cat thing. I do remember a similar thing though, Neil. I was trying to communicate. We were just for fun. We were just trying to communicate things to each other with another spiritual friend of mine, and I saw basically a chocolate box, and I said to her, "Chocolates? Do you understand chocolates?" She said, "No, that's not the object. It's nothing near what the chocolates was." And I said, "What was it?" And I actually saw, Cadbury's roses, the chocolates, right, with the rose on the front. She actually said my object was a rose.
It's annoying, isn't it? Sometimes it's annoying. Well,
I'll remind you, Mandy, because you told me, because it's I think I'd come to see you at this demo, but then I had to leave, and you told me afterwards how it had gone, and you had given a reading to someone, and you brought back their cat, and something like they had asked, "Oh, what's its name?" And all you saw was a jar of Marmite in your head.
Right.
And that's what you said. And they said, "Yeah, that's the name of the cat. Marmite was the name of the cat."
Yay.
You see?
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, I remember you telling me. I was impressed. I thought it was really good. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And again, with my own development, I've started to get quite good at picking up names. And I remember when my daughter started going out with Stuart, who's really called Chris, the boyfriend, is that I was saying, "Oh, Morgan, that's the name of the daughter." I said, "I seem to be quite good at getting names now in spiritualist psychic circles." So she goes, "Oh, can you tell me the name of Chris's mum then?" And I thought, "Oh, that's put me on the spot." So she goes, "I'll give you a clue. It begins with M." And I said, "No, I don't want a clue." So I said, "Oh, Mary." And she goes, "Oh my God, how did you know?" I said, "Well, you did say the letter
Give me the
M."
name, yeah.
So she goes, "Okay, can you guess the name of his dad then?" And I saw my own dad appear in my mind. My dad's name is Brian. So I just said, "Brian." And she goes, "Oh my God, how did you get that?" I said, "Because I saw my own dad and his name's Brian." So like you say, Smith's crisps or roses, you get shown something. And I remember seeing, who's that really good medium that's on TV and stage, Tony
Stockwell.
Yeah, I saw him at a spiritualist church in.
Yeah, we did. Brilliant.
In St Albans, I think it was, and the person I was with told me that their friend had died of cancer, but had asbestos-based cancer. That's a specific type of cancer. And anyway, Tony Stockwell does this kind of thing where he takes a photograph. If everyone puts a photograph in a box or something, he'd take out the photograph and he'd hold it to his head and he'd start tuning into this person. And he happened to pick my friend's photograph up, the very first one. So he started tuning and said, yeah, this person has a bar in their own home, which, not many people have a bar with drinks in their own home. And apparently that was true. And then he said, this person died of cancer. And he said, died of asbestos poisoning cancer. And I thought, oh my God, I've only just been told earlier this evening that guy died of asbestos. I thought, how the bloody hell did he get that? So at the end of the evening, I went up and said, you did really well. How did you get specifically asbestos cancer? Being a medium, you kind of want to know these things, how they do that. And he said what happened was his own grandfather had a motorcycle which had a sidecar which was made of asbestos panels. And he said that every time he was shown that sidecar of the motorbike, he knew that the spirit world was referring to asbestos.
Right.
Brilliant.
So he picked up cancer and he saw the asbestos and said, yeah, that's asbestos poisoning thing, So it's very interesting that they start to use techniques that work for you but may not be working for others. And I remember seeing you, Jayne, at the demo that you did with Janine that I video filmed, and there was a lady there with her, I think this was a grandmother there with her granddaughter, and the girl's mother was communicating through with you, and you suddenly said, I've got your mum's name. Her name was what's that song? Who's that singer? Dolly Parton. Jolene. Her name was Jolene because you were hearing the song Jolene.
Yes.
And you said, I'm hearing the song Jolene by Dolly Parton. Was her name Jolene? And they said, yes. That's how they got the name through to you see.
Brilliant. Good stuff, isn't it?
Forgot that, didn't you?
I don't. Well, probably same as us guys. We don't remember it when we said it. You couldn't possibly. You couldn't contain it. Could you?
Yeah, you're in an altered state of some sort of consciousness, and I think
we're up here. Yeah,
you might remember certain things, but a lot of it you forget, don't you? It's like a dream. Isn't it? Yeah.
I try and describe it as almost like what I've got to do is raise my consciousness up here. Spirit, I've got to drop it a little bit. And I don't know about you guys, Andrew. Mark says he's all right, but when I finish these days, it takes me 2 or 3 days to recover from it. Maybe I'm getting old, I don't know. But to me now, it's exhausting to do an hour and a half and hold that energy. Feels like a very big hangover.
Well, we prefer to do it together, isn't it? Kind of,
it's easier,
share the evening. I mean, I too would struggle now to do like an hour and a half on my own.
But not in our younger years. It would have been 3 hours. Shut me up.
2 hours and keep going all night. But
yeah, definitely.
Not anymore.
I for that very reason, I chop my little thing up into segments, and if I'm doing a night, I'll have other readers doing their thing, so I'll just kind of like swapping over. And recently I've been doing demos with a girl called Kerry, and we literally swap way through. That makes it so much easier.
It does.
I could do like 10 minutes and then just sit down, have a break. She'll do it 10 minutes, then I can. That works really well.
It's the way forward after 40, isn't it?
It is.
Do you find you both communicate the same spirit in the demo? I mean, I've seen these two guys. I think they were called 3 mediums, but one guy wasn't there on that night. But what they did was quite a clever.
Yeah, we've done
I don't know what you want to call it. A clever piece of a clever gimmicky thing that they did was that they would guess the person's PIN number of their debit card. And the first medium would say your PIN, and they say, we're going to give you a PIN number, but we're not going to give you the exact order it is. The first guy would go 7-3, and the other bloke would go 2-4. And the lady goes, yeah, you're right. And she was juggling the numbers around in her head to sort of say, yes, that is my PIN number, and it's like they're so confident they can do it. And it was really, I just wondered if
to me that just kind of like I find that to me personally demeans the whole topic slightly because I think if I start whittling out, I got your PIN number, what am I doing? I'm only there as some proof that life I don't want to be I'm not an entertainer. No, I don't like it. it. We've done like the shared spirit, haven't we, where we've literally pulled some of the audits and both of us have done it. But if Mark suddenly said, oh, do you fancy giving out PIN numbers, I'll be like, nah, I'm all right.
It almost sounds like a con job, doesn't it?
It screws your credibility a bit. Why do you need to do that? I don't know.
I think that's psychic rather than mediumistic anyway.
Well, mentalism, isn't it? It's more mentalism.
Sorry,
I just she's bursting to ask a question.
I am, and actually mentioning the psychic bit, what I had in mind was when you actually do mediumship, do you get a combination of channeling stuff and psychic stuff as well? And
psychic bulks it out. Yeah, 100%. The psychic bulks the message out, if that makes sense. So your nan isn't particularly worried what you had for tea last night, believe it or not. But I could pick that up from you psychically. So psychic, in my opinion, it's like sandwich filler. It just fills it out. Or would be like, your nan's here, she sends her love, she's called Margaret. That's me done. So it fills it out. So yeah, you'll probably use a combination of all of them, wouldn't we?
Yeah, interesting. You just said my mum's name there, so maybe my mum.
Oh, is it? All right, have that one then.
But used to buy sandwich spread as a kid, so there you go.
Oh, there you go. There we have it. Yeah, mum's Margaret.
Yeah. Right. I think on that note, we'll take a break here on the Paranormal Peep Show. Join us in part 2, where we're going to go into heavier stuff, I think, if we're allowed to on YouTube. I don't know. You may have to join us on Rumble if this part isn't in the show. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the Illuminati and the shape of the world, where it's going. Maybe it also ties in with psychic stuff and mediumship as well. Maybe there's a clamp on that and they don't want us to really know what's going on. So
well, unfortunately,
us people are heretics, in the eyes of the world, perhaps. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I've been channeling it for 2 years now, so I'm raring to go.
Oh,
can't wait.
That's the psychic scenes. Okay, so stay tuned for the Paranormal Peep Show in a minute.
Join Andy and Neil every month on the Paranormal Peep Show, part of the Paranormal UK radio network, for fun, frolics and lots of information about weird stuff, UFOs, ghosts and things that go bump in the night and everything associated with them. Fascinating guests, fascinating talk, fascinating information.
Hi folks, welcome back to the Paranormal Peep Show with myself, Neil Geddes-Ward, and guests Mark and Jayne. So Neil, we're going to go slightly heavy now, aren't we, apparently?
Yes, yeah, with a pre-agreement between Jayne and Mark, we've decided to ramp this up a little bit. So we're not going to just be talking about life after death, although we might still be talking about life after death and what happens to us after we cease to exist as corporal bodies. We're going to go into the more corporate world, I suppose, rather than corporal bodies, and discuss things that are a little bit heavier. So if this part is missing from YouTube, then, well, that's just the way things are, but you'll certainly catch it on Rumble. Or on, if you're listening on Spreaker, certainly we'll be on Spreaker with that one. But we're going to be talking about events that have been shaping our world for the last couple of years. And so we're going to be talking in a kind of codified way, maybe to not upset any artificial intelligences that might be lurking the internet trying to catch us out. So if you're clued up about what we're talking about, then you certainly know some of what we're talking about. Does that make sense? I hope. Okay, Jayne, if I could start with you, because you've been bursting at the seams to kind of talk about this.
Yeah, I have.
So I know that on Facebook you ran a kind of group. I don't know if you're still running it. Are you? What? I mean, can you talk about the name of your group, or have you got to say it in a coded way?
No, it's fine. It's called Spiritually Awake and Aware. And I realised during 2020 that there was a great need for people to go and have a place to talk about what was going on, but also to offer a more positive slant. Spirit have been very clear in my ear that this is very much an energy and vibrational war. And that we've got to start to keep our vibrations high. And I think a lot of people have no clue how to do that. But I've worked earnestly now for 2.5 years to raise awareness and to try and get people to understand what we're dealing with here. In my mind, this is spiritual warfare. This is the last battle.
We're on the same page.
Good man. Good man. Nice to meet you.
What do you think? Because I think things are heading towards this great reset, new world order, dystopian cesspit hell. But I think if enough people wake up and basically say, screw you, I think we could change things around. I think the biggest dangers to society are people like Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Joe Biden, Justin Trudeau, all of that Illuminati. I'm going to use the word scum because they want us dead. I kind of like just want to be left alone. I heard this phrase of libertarians secretly planning to take over the world and then just leave you alone. That's kind of how I feel it. I just want to be left alone. Leave me to do my own life. But they don't want that. They want to kill us all. And because of that, unfortunately, my defensive response is screw you, and I hope you die as well. But then if we go down that path, we go down the path of negativity. So, Jayne, what are we going to do? How are we going to get out of this?
I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to start to appreciate that there's already been a choice that's already been made. It's already done. We're seeing the after throes of this now. With natural law, with God's law, we will have a choice, I believe, as we've always had a choice all throughout these last 2.5 years. And we will continue to have a choice. Spirit have shown me the end result of this. And yes, it's going to, in my opinion, it's going to get dicey and ropey. But we're going to have a choice. I almost feel it's going to come to the point where they're going to say, do you fancy a smart city? And we're going to say, no, thank you. And they're going to say, well, bugger off then, and don't ever darken our doorsteps. And that's how I see it going. There will be free will at the end. But I think the smart city is going to be very appealing to a lot of people. We're seeing that, aren't we? That people still very much love, I'm going to be a little bit risque, the monarchy. They love the government. They love daddy telling them what to do. And these people, they're not going to wake up now. We're wasting our time with that. Now, Spirit said to me last year, because I was one of the big advocates in the park, when I'm a few protests, and Spirit said, Jayne, stop telling people what to do and think. Start to show them. So from that point, I cut off, and I'm like, do you know what? I'm actually going to show what a healthy woman looks like. And that's how I'm going to show people how to live. I'm not going to tell them anymore. What right have I got to tell people they're right or wrong? I don't like it when they do it to me.
But this is it. I mean, my point of view is I'm a libertarian, and my point of view is I will leave you alone. Just leave me the hell alone. The problem comes when you get mandatory. When this little word mandatory comes in, it's like, we'll have our ouchie fouchies, and that's fine. You have your ouchie fouchies, but we want you to have them too. That's where we've got the problem. That's 100%. Where they can screw off.
100%. What do you say about that, Mark? 'Cause I know you had a lot of stick, didn't you, to conform?
Well, I guess my story with this goes back, years. I was reading David Icke stuff, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. And like, I was quite shocked by it, because I was reading it and thinking, this cannot be true, at the same time as knowing it was true. So, like, my mind was like, almost, this is so bizarre. It's like, this cannot be true, my logic, rational mind. And yet my intuition mind, my soul mind, was telling me this was true. So, like, for 20 years, I've kind of known about the corruption and the self-serving kind of, government policies. And then I just left. I've still got the David Icke book somewhere, and then I just left it and carried on, and life was fairly normal, really, wasn't it, compared to what we've had in the last couple of years. But when Boris was elected, I was terrified. I don't know why. I'd never had anything to do with Boris, never really seen him or followed him, and yet my psychic sense was, this is now a time to be afraid. And then, of course, literally as soon as he was elected, the virus was invented, wasn't it? So when it very first came out, and we were showing pictures from China, I was like terrified. I remember I was driving home from Oxford. I think it was on the Sunday just before lockdown or something, and all the motorway signs were like, stay at home stuff, and I was really scared. I remember putting petrol in the car, thinking, what if it's on my hands now? And it was about 2 weeks of that, and then I kind of connected back to my intuition, because fear had taken me away from myself. Came back to my intuition, and I just thought, oh my God, this is absolute lies. And so it's been so incredibly difficult for the last 2.5 years, not being scared of the virus. Not even, I do believe there's a virus. I've had COVID. It wasn't very pleasant, but I've had other illnesses that were worse. So it's not that I don't believe there's a virus. I do tend to think, or feel, I should say, I feel it's man-made. But anyway, I felt all the way through this that this was just about control and co. And how difficult that's been for me when, pretty much the vast majority of people that I interact with are queuing up for medical interventions and, kind of believing the word of Boris when he was doing his 5 o'clock announcements. And just like every inch of my being was just telling me, this is rubbish, and they don't do any of the stuff they're imposing on us. They don't have lockdowns, and it's since been proved, isn't it? More parties at number 10 than any other person in the country. If they believed what they were saying was true to us, they would have been in some kind of nuclear resistant bunker, wouldn't they? Along with the Queen, the rest of the royal family, and all the other politicians. They weren't. They were partying at Downing Street, singing ABBA songs.
Yeah.
I just find it really unforgivable that amount of control and disempowerment that they've inflicted on the people.
Talking of the royal family, I know that they were getting on. I know that they were getting old, but isn't it interesting? Triple jibbed. I think that, or at least double jibbed, and then Prince Philip passes on to the other side, and then Queenie passes on to the other side. I don't know if you saw Queen's hands when she was shaking Liz Truss, completely purple. I don't know if you've seen Prince Charles's hands or King Charles's hands. He's got sausage fingers now. Now, I'm not saying it's the ouchie fouchie. It's just I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe it's shaking hands with so many people it makes your hands sweat.
On about week 3 of the lockdown, by this time I've watched these 3 men stood there with their little slogans, which is total manipulation. And it very much, I said, they're lying to me. I know when people are lying to me. And I went into my bedroom and I sat at my dressing table, and a white figure came in the bedroom. She stood behind me. It made me jump. And she said, clear as day, they are hiding God from you. And I thought, right, so I went down the bloody church, didn't I? I thought I'll go and find him. I didn't find him there. I thought, funnily enough, but that really got me into it. I read the Bible, and my goodness, the last book of the Bible, if you haven't read it yet, read it. What an eye opener!
Revelations,
isn't it? And it says in there, clear as day, in the last days, pharmakia will deceive the earth. Pharmakia means pharmacy. The pharmacy will deceive the earth, and God, the Bible, whatever you want to call it, it is written there. And people, it's just, to me, I have been astonished in the spiritual community how many people were so scared to die when we've spent our whole lives telling people don't be afraid to die. Wow, what hypocrites. I think
I was going to say, the spiritual community is so split, isn't it? Because I found there that it's really in half. The spiritual people who are absolutely how we think, that it's all BS, it's all rubbish, it's lies, it's manipulation and control. And then there's others, fold the sleeve up, give it to me.
Give me another one. Yeah. Let's have it again. I think that for me, in my little world, it was only me and my brother that were speaking out. And it was like, where's all the spiritual people?
I was getting regular Facebook bans.
Good man. You got your stripes.
You've probably seen the North Korean kind of all the medals, and it's like, this is how many Facebook bans I've got. It was literally kind of every other week. I was another ban, another censorship. It's incredible.
It's interesting because one of the most outspoken people within my own family was my dad about this. Not against it, but for it, saying you must get a certain medical procedure because Boris says so.
That's right.
He was going on and on and on about it, and now my dad has passed on, and he passed on with an aortic aneurysm, the same thing as my mum. Now, my mum had an aortic aneurysm back in 2016. Just coincidentally, if you like, that my dad had the same thing. But I did look into it afterwards and found that some guy had been doing research, some Austrian scientist or someone like that, that suggested there was a possible link between certain medical interventions that we've been encouraged to take and aortic aneurysms. And then there's been other reports of people saying they've never heard the ambulances so busy. In the last 2 years, there seems to be so many more sirens on the road than there were previously.
And if we look at this more from a spiritual aspect than a human aspect, let's kind of let's delve down this path with me for a moment. So we're starting to understand that everything is frequency and vibration. Everything is. Now, some people are on such low frequencies that they have willingly given their power away to men in black suits because they feel so incapable of making any decisions for themselves. And then you've got the people, we class them as awake, perhaps they're just more conscious, who actually trust their senses. They know when something's not right and they've gone with that. So I call the lower consciousness as fillers, like movie extras. They're there and they're running about, but nothing's really getting done. And what if they're there in place for the spiritual mind, those of us who can see, to create the new? So as much as we want to talk about there's loads of deaths and this is the end of the world, what about if this is the creation of the new? And that's where me and Mark have been.
I think that's true.
We've got to dismantle the systems. We've got to destroy this now. It's happening. But it will be our choice as to what happens to us individually. It has to be. It is natural law.
Well, back in 2011, I was really drawn to do a course for kind of spiritual people. At that time, I was running a spiritual centre, and this course was basically about how to exist and live in a very different world, in a world where there weren't shops and petrol stations and all those things that we've taken for granted for years. How to exist and thrive in a world without any of that. And of course, I thought at the time, because there was a lot of talk about 2012, I thought, oh, the end of the world is due in 2012, and that's what this is all about. Well, of course, the end of the world didn't come in 2012. But what I've seen over the last 2 years is everything I taught in that course about how to create your own reality, how to manifest things, all of those things that are going to be so vital as we go forward are the things that we've needed now. I mean, Jayne's often surprised when I say in Plymouth, you cannot get stuff in the supermarket. The shelves are just empty. Have been for 2 years. There's nothing. Sometimes we have no petrol, we have no diesel. And I'm not exaggerating. Sometimes you go to the supermarket and there is nothing there. You get a tin of peaches perhaps, or some evaporated milk. That's it. And so we already in like big cities like Plymouth, we are having to think about how do we live in this new world when you cannot guarantee the things that have always been available to us. So I think what like Jayne's saying, I think that those of us who know are better off channeling our energy into showing people, look, this is how you now survive in this new world. Because if we go down the path of anger, and believe me, I have been raging for 2 years, but if you go down the road of anger, that it doesn't do anything. It lowers the vibration, it alienates people. Do you know what I mean? It's like, apart from being a way of venting the absolute frustration about it all and the horrors of it all, it doesn't do anything. So I've kind of been really guided towards like a more loving, kind of compassionate approach. So the Facebook group I've run on this, and it only has a few members, but it's called Unity. So it's about, providing a space where everyone can be included and united. So, if somebody did choose to take a medical procedure, well, okay, that's their choice. They may regret it. But actually, from my point of view, they need to be supported and helped just as much as somebody who was ridiculed for not taking a procedure. So I guess I'm coming from a kind of quite compassionate, open-armed, place with all this now.
Because we're in this mess, because we've got to look at our own selves in this. Very much we've sold ourselves out for convenience. We've been dazzled by things that tinkle, that we can touch with our fingers. So each one of us has responsibility to where we are now. And I think, we could go, you're a stupid bugger. And I've done it. I have done it. I've screamed and shouted at the ludicrousness of people. And there's people I'm not going to have in my life. I know that. But if someone does come and they have had a medical intervention, I'm not going to turn them away. I'm going to help them as much as I'd help someone who hasn't. It's not for me to sit and judge. Isn't that why we're in this mess?
I think we need to have a pragmatic approach. I think compassionate is definitely the way to go. The problem we have is, imagine we're in 1939 and we've got the rise of Adolf Hitler.
I hear you. I know what you're going to say.
Approach is wonderful whilst you're in Britain, but the rest of the world is being trampled by the jackboot. Now the problem is the Nazis never went away. Operation Paperclip, they went all over the world, including Argentina, through the Vatican rat lines. Vatican helped with that, and into America and into places like Big Pharma and Big Agro and the rocket program for NASA, etc., which is a whole different story. But the Nazis never really went away.
Agreed.
Now what they've done is that they've regrouped, and that same Nazi consciousness is turning up, and basically Bill Gates, bless his little cotton socks, Bill Gates is buying up huge swathes of agricultural land and doing absolutely nothing with it. And we've got Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum telling us that we're going to live in pods, own nothing, eat bugs, and be happy. Oh, by the way, you're going to be microchipped, and by the way, there's going to be food shortages. We have no idea why there's going to be food shortages. Could it be the fact that they're buying up all the land and doing nothing with it? There is a planned extermination. I would like to see Nuremberg 2 for these people. The thing is, meditation and compassion and being positive is wonderful. And yes, that has its place. But we have a problem, and that problem is sheer evil, and we need to do something about it. My thinking is, okay, so what needs to happen? We need to arrest the people that are doing this. Okay, how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to need military, and we're going to need the police. But the problem is the military and the police, with their training, this is why this is so insidious. They are trained to be little system drones to follow orders.
Yep.
There is some good news. Apparently, some of the sheriffs, and I don't know why, the sheriffs in the US are very anti-New World Order, and they're more on the side of the citizens and the people of America, because the sheriffs grow up in their counties, and they're very involved with the citizens, and you know they help each other out. The problem is when you get these kind of like these faceless kind of like goon squads, you know, whether you call them feds or whoever they are, the type of people that would raid Trump's house but leave Biden's laptop alone, these types.
Yeah.
I mean, what am I trying to say here? We need to try and sway the military and the police onto the side of goodness, and we need to start going after the darkness, and that's the only way we can do it. If we ignore the darkness, we can meditate, but if we ignore the darkness, all that's going to happen is one day you're going to get a knock on the door and it's off to the gulag.
I get you. I'm not saying sitting here we should pray ourselves out of this. I think it's far beyond that.
So what do we do?
What do we do? We get prepared and we sort our shit out. I think that it, you know, for me, here's what I want to do. I'm going to get out of this. There's some land. I'm going to plant my own vegetables. I'm going to surround my property with common law. I've looked into that. I've become a peace constable in the last 2 years. There's ways to protect ourselves. But I think it's lovely to think that a load of good people are going to stand up and go and take these people down. They ain't. I ain't seen no evidence of that yet. So all I can think at this point is self-preservation. I know that's harsh. It's a little bit self-preservation, because don't forget, everything you're being shown on this television, it's a movie. It's a movie. It has as much energy as we give to it. And what they want, imagine the Illuminati, they sit there and we all get outraged. This is abominable. And they suck it in like cigarette smoke. And it makes them high and it makes them strong. How do you deal with a psychopath and a narcissist? You cut it off. You cut off the supply. Without our supply, they couldn't keep going.
There is some good news. Apparently, the people taking up the medical intervention, that is just plummeting now. They've got huge stocks that they don't know what to do with. They're just going to have to dump it because it's only got like a 6-month sell-by date. And people are a lot more against the New World Order. Joe Biden called it the liberal world order. And when Joe Biden did that speech, you've probably seen it, where he's got the red and the black in the background, and he called all Trump supporters and Republicans, he called them terrorists, domestic terrorists. I think he's nailed the coffin, put the nail in his coffin for that one. The only way Biden will get re-elected is if he steals the election again.
When Trump lost, I thought, to be honest with you, fucking hell, we're in trouble now. That's what I sat there and thought. But then I've got to go back up to what I know spiritually. There's a reason we were all able to contact the spirit world at this time. Spirit have never let me down. Humans have. I'm going to put my faith in them before I put my trust in any living man. And I just get this good impression that at the end of this carnage, think about it. Every mass exodus of souls throughout history, every one of them has been to try and teach the earth something, but we're stupid, we're slow, we're very slow to catch on.
This is a frustrating thing. Humans, not everyone, the listeners of this show, I think, will be kind of like quite enlightened and quite awake. Otherwise,
yes.
Show. But the general sheeple, and it's interesting you use filler people. This is a concept I've come across as well, and NPCs as well, non-player characters.
Yes.
I think that's absolutely right. There are some people who are just so programmed and just so zombie sheep, you just cannot get through to them, and no matter what you do, they'll just go along with whatever they're told. Support the current thing, you know.
There's my partner and a lot of people, good people, got together in 2021, and they stood on the side of the roads begging people not to get the jib jab in their children. They were shouted at, they had eggs thrown at them. One man tried to punch a woman. They were horrified. How dare we go against? So I'm like, bugger it. I will help anyone who asks, but I'm not devoting my life now to wake up the fillers.
It's interesting because about 2 months ago, Monica and I were coming back from somewhere. We're driving back into Weymouth, And I think we actually went under the railway bridge that probably runs past your house, you know, the train line.
Yep.
At Weymouth into Dorchester. It was Jayne. Yeah, probably
it was me, I was there, yeah.
But there was what we saw as we approached it slowly in the traffic was they were holding a great big banner over the side of the bridge or pinned it up or something, and it was certain medical appliances that we've been encouraged to take, and it said "Stop the lies" in big letters. And there's all these people on the bridge. Now I don't know whether they were the people that actually put the banner there or they were just staring down. But I kind of just waved up at them like that slowly as I went under, and they kind of gave me a thumbs up. So they were kind of acknowledging that I saw their banner. And I thought this is interesting that these people are putting it there. So people are starting to get a little bit clued up here and there, pockets of people, you know. So, and of course,
it'd be nice, wouldn't it? I remember watching. Me and Mark, we've always been very interested in the World War II for some reason, even as little kids. And I remember we used to say to each other, "God, how could people behave like that?"
Oh, now we know.
Now we know, and it's not hard to do, is it?
Yeah,
it's not hard to get people to do it.
I tell you what's interesting with the mindset type of thing. Now, going back to the monarchy, right? I'm not completely anti-monarchy. I don't want a monarchy. I want a republic, but I'm not bloodthirsty, and I don't want I don't want a violent revolution, and I don't want to kind of chop the heads off monarchists. That's not my thing.
Yeah.
But when the Queen's funeral happened, there was I watched it purely from a historical point of view. I thought I have to watch this. Like, I may not agree with everything. You know, I don't want the monarchy, but I will watch it because it's, you know, a once in a lifetime thing. It's a historical thing. But because it was absolutely relentless about how wonderful the Queen was, and all the, you know, how wonderful the guards look, and all the people saying, "Oh, she was part of my life," I kind of like felt myself being kind of like almost dragged along with it, or I felt that. I felt the pull, the magnetism of, you know, a nation coming together. And then I kind of thought, drew myself back out of that. And I thought, imagine that, but in 1930s Germany.
Yes.
Imagine how like of a magnetic pull it would be to kind of raise your hand up and do a Heil Hitler.
Oh, they loved it. They'd have got high off it, wouldn't they? It
was a mindset, and as you say, it was so easy to get swept up in it. And I could have gone watching the monarchy. I could have gone full into, and I had to stop myself, full into, the Queen was great, and isn't it great having all this history and all this monarchy and stuff. But I had to stop myself and think, hang on a minute, it's not democratic. They're not elected. They rule over everyone else, and they own everything.
It's slave master, isn't it? Slave master. That's exactly what we're trying to spiritually come out of it. I don't need a master. I'm an independent person, thank you.
Also, for those that have forgotten, there is footage, black and white footage, should be still out there on the internet.
Queen and her mum.
The Queen and her mum, Princess Margaret, doing Heil Hitler as kids.
Because like you said, Andrew, the Nazis didn't go away. They didn't lose the war, in my opinion.
They did not lose.
The Queen comes from a German family. They actually changed their name during the war or just before the war.
But good old Britannia, eh? God save the Queen.
Coburg,
or something like that. So we're kind of like we're under the hood. If you lift up the bonnet of society, there's a few kind of German-made devices there, as it were. Whether, you know, it originates in Germany, this whole idea of what they become, maybe it originates in Austria. You know,
I think we could look to China, perhaps. I think China's a major contender here as well. They want a Chinese system rolled out in the country, don't they? But I'm exempt. I choose to go and live as a woman, a free woman of the land, and I would rather die than live under what's coming. That's not. I'd rather get shot.
Me too.
That's not an issue for me. That's not a choice.
What have spirits? I mean, obviously you mentioned this spirit that came into your living room, glowing white lady, and said they're not speaking of God or something. What else have they said? Anything else about what's coming to you?
They've shown me the end result. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of things called med beds that are ready available to the elites. We don't get them, of course. There's food, there's children playing. We're going back to basics for those who want to join it, but not many people will. Who the hell wants to go back and tend to their own crops? We sold out years ago for convenience. So there will be a few of us, be that hundreds of thousands or a few of us, that will choose that way of life. It will be a choice. It has to be a choice. That's spiritual law. There has
that's
to be
what
free
I've
will.
seen too. That's what when I was talking about that course earlier, it was like, how can we manifest things? How can we live in a world where we can't depend on supplies in the way that we have done? So I too kind of have that vision of world being very, very basic, very simple, much fewer people. And to be honest, it doesn't look that bad. Do you know what I mean?
No, don't.
I think that the terrifying bit is the bit between now and then. That's the bit that's awful.
Yeah, this has made me actually incredibly depressed recently, because it's a case of this all used to be somewhere over the rainbow conspiracy theory. Now what's the difference between conspiracy theory and fact? About 6 months. That's so it's everything that's kind of like was crazy David Icke, Alex Jones, crazy stuff is now, and I wish we were wrong. I wish it was just tinfoil hat stuff. But we're seeing it. We're seeing World Economic Forum people saying you will own nothing, you will live in a pod, you will eat bugs, there's going to be no energy, and there's going to be no food, and we need to cut the global population. How can we manifest the arrest of these psychopaths? That's what I want to say. Do you know what? I'd love a load of like SWAT people, or kind of white hat black SWAT people dressed in black, machine guns, everything, just go and raid all of Klaus Schwab, Bill Gates, Anthony Fauci, all of these psychopaths, arrest them, and through a proper trial, put them on trial in a world court, Nuremberg 2, and absolutely, if they are found guilty, the maximum possible thing.
Trouble is, it's got to be dismantled. It's got to be destroyed before we can even get to that point. Or they're going to put these blokes in the courts, which are going to find them innocent. And it's lovely, but everything's got to be destroyed before we can rebuild anything like that. And if you go spiritually, Andrew, what's your soul here for at this time then? To get depressed? What's it here for?
Well, this is it. I thought, do you know what? I thought my soul was here to try and make a difference, but then I got to the point of, well, maybe it is all just lost.
I said to Spirit, because I started suffering panic attacks. I went so far down the rabbit hole when it all kicked off. I ended up in hospital. Anyway, I come out. I knew I had to sort of put a lid on it a bit. And I said to Spirit one night, I said, I can't change the world. Stop showing me this stuff. I can't do nothing with it. They said, Jayne, you ain't got to change the world. Just change a few people's lives around you. Let the ripple effect go out. That's all I can do. I accept that. And I can make sure me and my family are safe. That's all I can do at this point.
Same here. I mean, it's gone a bit, like we probably don't know, but you can imagine like in the 50s, if someone was gay and they had to kind of do a knowing look and hopes the other person picked up on that knowing look. Do you know? We've heard stories about that. And that's how I'm finding it is now. So, my clients are kind of almost dropping a little something in the water to see if they can tell me that they've not had any interventions, or, they're curious, because it's so terrifying, isn't it, to actually come out as being someone who sees through all this. And what I'm finding is I'm getting more and more of those clients, people who've been, injured through medical intervention, people who are thinking differently. And I think all I can do, I can't even say his name, Klaus, whatever.
Klaus Schwab.
I can't do it. But what I can do is help these people who are beginning to wake up, who are beginning to see something different, who are regretting decisions. I can support them. And I guess that's me about adding my energy to the love and the light energy, which I hope then will dismantle the likes of the Nazi types who are doing this stuff. So I think you've got to add your power to the light and hope that kind of, dispels the shadow.
100%.
Maybe I'm being optimistic. Maybe I'm being naive. I think
you've got to have some kind of optimism. Otherwise, you really go. I've just been to the darkness point of what's the point of actually being here, kind of thing.
Oh, I've been there the last 2 years.
Last 2 years, me and Mark, terrible, aren't we? We ain't sat here thinking, oh, love and light, trust me. We ain't. I'd love nothing more to see these men shot, executed. They're traitors.
They're traitors. They're traitors. People like Chris Whitty. I don't think Chris Whitty is evil. I don't get that vibe, but he is absolutely a whore of Big Pharma. He's in the pockets of Big Pharma. He's controlled by them. And I'll tell you what, this removal of God thing, I bet Chris Whitty is a complete atheist, because he's acting like science. The science is God. And what they're trying to swap spirituality and God with shiny science. Look at the science. And they are we allowed to swear? Are we allowed to say F?
Yeah.
Neil,
I did earlier. Yeah, who cut us out?
They have fucked it up.
Yeah.
The medical establishment have fucked it up. If you have a look at groups like Died Suddenly, there's tons of groups. Anyone listening to this, have a look at Died Suddenly. Join all of their groups.
That's
they
on
are
Facebook.
Floods of people with heart attacks, strokes, blood clots. We've got athletes. We've got fit athletes dropping dead left, right, and centre, all over the place. Neil, there's somebody, a mutual acquaintance of ours that you know. 4 members of her family got triple jibbity jibbed, and now they're dead. Through heart attacks and strokes. This is genocide. And now it's come to light. There's a drug called remdesivir in America, and there's actually lawsuits going on where thousands of people are approaching these 2 attorneys in California, saying that remdesivir, first of all, it shouldn't be used to treat COVID. Even the WHO have admitted it shouldn't be used. But what's happening? The medical establishment in America are using remdesivir to treat COVID. What does it do? Well, it shouldn't be used for respiratory diseases, apparently. And what they're doing as well is not only is it kind of like causing breathing problems for people, making the condition worse, they're also at the same time saying, oh, well, their lungs are filling up with fluid, so we can't give them food or water. So they're also starving them and dehydrating them. And there are family members saying, XYZ, my mum, my dad, my uncle, blah, 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 went into hospital with, a bad COVID, but wasn't life-threatening. And basically they died. And a lot of it comes down to remdesivir. And I tell you what they're doing. They're asking people if they're jabbed when they come in, and if they're not jabbed, then they immediately go onto remdesivir. So it's almost a certain death. And what do they say? Oh, well, unjabbed people that are the most likely people to die from COVID. They're not dying from COVID. They're dying from
statistics. Yeah, absolutely. A bit like in that first lockdown, the Midazolam murders.
Yes.
And not a murmur from the good old general public, but they're going shout and scream for this old lady who died at the weekend.
Yeah.
Done with it. Done with it.
Clap at 8
Oh, wasn't she lovely? Wasn't she lovely riding her horse? Terrible goes on.
You know what all of this is? Eugenics. This is all eugenics, and now we're back to the Nazis.
As Fauci's grandfather was in the prison of war camps. I mean, Bill Gates' grandfather, it doesn't go too far, does it?
Wow.
So what we've got to understand is that these people, there's a great astrologer. What's her name, Mark? I've given her a big up. I've forgotten her name. Pam Gregory. And she was saying in 2020, each one of us has a decision to make this year, and it will have ramifications. So choose wisely. So the people now have had 3 medical interventions. I can't reach them people.
They're queuing up for the 4th. They're not coming to you.
And they'll have the 5th. And guess what? You get the flu shot free with it. They're beyond help. But perhaps our job is not to. That's a great lot of energy going on these people.
Yeah.
I don't want saving. They want their interventions.
I just feel so sorry for them in a way that the fear that and don't forget the government employed psychological advisors to work out how to terrify the population. They are so terrified that they genuinely believe they have to have that or they're going to die.
Yeah.
With brainwashing on that level, you've got to be bloody strong to withstand it. I was so close when I had COVID. I knew it was man-made. I knew it had been released from China by accident. And when I had it, what was really weird was it didn't feel natural. The smell of it was synthetic. It was really weird, the smell of it, Perhaps I think I've had it twice now at least. But do you know what? You survive it because strangely we've got an immune system.
Yay.
But these people have been so terrified that they don't even believe their immune system will fight it,
Isn't it weird that this is what I was thinking, watching all of these, all their little podiums of wash your hands and blah, blah, blah. Not once did they say, do you know what? Maybe go and get some sunlight, maybe stop cooking, cut down on takeaways, cut down on fatty foods, get veg, get some vitamin D, get some zinc, and go into meditation and get plenty of rest and sleep.
No.
That. It's jibbity jib all the way.
I said to one guy who was suffering terribly after his second intervention, I suggested a course of vitamins that I highly recommend. He said, I ain't taking that quackery, love. I'm done here. A quackery to take a vitamin is quackery. But we'll have
I know what you mean about the synthetic thing. I've had it twice as well.
Have you? Did you have a synthetic smell?
Yeah, coffee smelt of burnt barbecue.
Weird. I mean, I've still not. I had it about a year ago, last September. I've still not got my sense of smell back. Taste is there.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not denying that there's a virus out there. I'm absolutely not denying
It's
it.
definitely virus. Yeah.
But I think it's man-made.
It is absolutely, and this is bloody proven.
Well, they rehearsed it all, didn't they, in November 2019 before the election? They rehearsed this.
Senator Rand Paul.
101 thing. What was it? The Bill Gates kind of forum thing where they said, let's pretend there's a pandemic,
a virus on the loose.
Yeah. And then Senator Rand Paul dragged Fauci in front of, I think it's Congress, and Fauci lied. Fauci said that he was not involved with gain of function research. He was. He lied. That man is a criminal. He is responsible for genocide. If it was released on purpose, he is a war criminal and should be charged with genocide. If it was released accidentally, he should be charged with gross medical negligence and manslaughter. That is my view on that.
I mean, we know, don't we, that Russia and China want to kind of, take over the world. So what a great idea to release this thing, intentionally or accidentally, see what it does,
There's if anyone remembers the 70s series, it was called Survivors, and it was like a...
Oh, and they were lost on Desert Island?
No, it was a BBC series set in 1970s. When I watched it, it was 75, something like that, 1975. You would have been quite young, so perhaps you didn't.
You're showing your age.
Yeah, I'm definitely showing my age. I'm age. And basically what it was, it would start off with, it was set against a backdrop where this virus had somehow got out into the world. But the title sequence said it all, because it showed a Chinese Oriental guy with a mask on and, like sort of medical stuff. And he drops this vial of liquid in slow motion in the title sequence, and it splashes to the ground. Then it shows another Chinese guy getting on a plane from China, flying to Europe, and it's basically saying this is how this whatever germ has got out from China into the world by people flying about and stuff, And this thing is exactly repeat. Now in Survivors, more and more people were dying in the TV series, so there's only small pockets of humanity, and they're literally like a few people in every village would club together and say, right, okay, let's pick up the food from the supermarket, but only take tin stuff, and they'd have to make up their own laws as they went along. And one episode featured a guy that was accused of rape, and they hung him, and it turned out to be someone else or something. It's the problems they kind of tackled along the way. That's probably on DVD, and you could perhaps watch it on YouTube, but it's worth watching for anybody interested in that kind of thing. And the other thing is that, Andy, we spoke about this a couple of years ago when we first started seeing signs of this illness appear on the streets of China, and we were a bit baffled from it, because you'd see video footage of these people suddenly running down the street and they're dropping dead literally in the street. And this is a mysterious illness coming from China. Everybody, watch out! It's coming your way. And
with the reporter in a full hazmat and the cameraman in shorts.
But the thing is, you're thinking, how does the cameraman know that person's going to drop dead as they're tracking? Bang. And if you're so ill with COVID, you won't be running down the streets.
Well, with what really made me question the whole thing right from the very start, on BBC News, I don't generally tend to watch BBC News because it's mostly communist crap in my opinion. I remember seeing footage from China of somebody recording on their mobile, driving down, and there was basically bodies on the streets, covered up bodies. And it wasn't just one or two, it was just bodies. And at that time I was thinking, oh shite, okay. So when it eventually went over to Europe, which I knew it would do, I was just thinking, oh great, fantastic. When it did do, okay, there were some people that hospitalized, and there were some people that were got it really badly, and some people even died, but there was nobody in the streets who just suddenly collapsed and died. None.
Not one.
No.
What was that with that?
Quite hard to die from it when you look at the survival rate of 96%. Yes, it's really hard to die of it. Never mind drop dead in the street while running for your life.
I remember watching one early to probably in the April, and they'd highlighted the dead bodies they were covered. And bless them, one of these dead bodies, little fag, and had a sneak.
Oh yeah, in an ambulance or something.
Yes. And you're like, what? This ain't adding up.
And the dummies This is another
the
thing.
dummies.
In the hospital, they had all these news reports, and then you zoom in, and it's a mannequin.
Yeah.
It's with Sassiani,
and the crisis actors were brought in, and we could research them and fight. I mean, it was for people who still believing in this, goodness me. Which, if I go back spiritually, there has to be an exodus, or we will create this again.
Yeah.
Within 50 years, it'll all be back to where we are. There has to be an exodus, and that brings me no joy to say it, but I know it's happening.
I think it's true, because the medical intervention, injury rates are huge, aren't they? I mean, just people who I see, post-menopausal women who've started having periods again.
Yep, and me.
People with gout. People with myocarditis. I'm hearing all this all the time, and I just don't give my opinion on it because I think it's inappropriate and it's down to you to discover for yourself. But all of these things all the time, I've heard of deafness, blindness, the injuries, from
blood clots, terrible blood clots.
I want people listening to this to look up an embalmer called Richard Kirschman. Richard Kirschman, an embalmer for at least 20 years. He deals with about 400 bodies per day. He basically found that it's not really so much blood clots that are going on in jib-jabbed people in terms of why they're dying. How embalming works, apparently, and the process of embalming is to kind of preserve the body for funerals and things like that. They pump out all of the blood in your body, and they use something like formaldehyde or chemicals similar to that to preserve the body. As he was pumping, and this is only jibby-jabbed people, dead jibby-jabbed people, as he was pumping, he was noticing what can be described as, I think he called it anadoid proteins, this biological material that's like an elastic band. It's yellow and it's stretchy and it's pingy, and this is coming out of people's veins, and there's clumps of it. And he's saying it's not the blood clots that are doing it, it's whatever this is that's growing in it. And when they were working on RMNA technology in around about 2010, because this is not new technology, folks. 2010, guess who was working on it? Anthony Fauci. Just a coincidence. But they found that more or less all of the animals, when they were doing the tests, were dying. Like, this RMNA stuff is dangerous, it is not working, and it is killing. So what did they decide to do? Hey, let's use it on humans in 2020. Awesome, well done.
The whole world, let's go for it. Madness.
Depends what your intention for it is, though, doesn't it?
Well, this is it. If it's a
using it on the world.
Something else I didn't know, my God, and I'll need to find out if this is actually true, because I've heard of it. Apparently, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, before it was called the Belinda and Melinda Gates Foundation, was actually called something like the Foundation for Human Depopulation, Global Population, or some similar name to that. And I just thought, well, there you have it. There you have it.
Goodness me.
There's these Georgia guidestones that have been destroyed,
yes,
strangely enough, isn't there? So, Andy, do you know about, I know Ben did something, Ben Emlyn Jones, our friend, did a live stream on the Georgia guidestones, and weirdly, I had a dream about them.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, but they like just blocks of cement in my dream. And then, oddly enough, I was listening to a podcast the next day when they suddenly announced the Georgia guidestones had been destroyed, and I thought, how weird is that? Because I had no real interest in them. I vaguely heard them. I heard they got some inscription on there. No one knows much about them. I had a dream about them. The next day, I heard they'd been, knocked down or taken down or something.
Destroyed,
Yeah. So what's the background of the Georgia Guidestones exactly?
So the Georgia Guidestones were, I think there were 3 slabs together. Some people kind of like wondered who they were built by. We don't really know. I think there's some initials, but I've forgotten what the initials were. And they're in, I think there's something like 5 languages or kind of 7 languages, something like that. And they basically talk about keeping the world's global population under 500 million. I think this global population is currently, 8 billion, something like that on planet Earth. So they want to reduce it to 500 million. And it sounds wonderful, some of these things, like living in harmony with nature and all this kind of thing. It sounds wonderful until you realize the underpinning vibe is basically kill humans, get rid of humans. And that seems to be kind of their agenda. It also seems to be the green agenda as well. Now, I have to make it very clear that I do not want a toxic, polluted planet, and I don't want plastic in the oceans. I don't want turtles with straws in their mouths, and I don't want toxic crap pumping out all over the place. I'm all for decent, green energy, but the green agenda, when you really look at it, beware the watermelons. Watermelons are green on the outside, red, i.e. communist, on the inside.
100%.
So when you view some of the green agendas and they talk about wanting a green society and all this kind of thing, and you really get down to it and you ask them, okay, so what's your solution? What do you reckon? Then they start spouting out communist drivel, and it's usually about culling the world's population.
100%. That's the next bit, isn't it? The green agenda is going to be whittled in. Everyone's going to be seeing that then. Yay, we could be great citizens now. This is, in my opinion, the introduction of the social credit system.
This is where it's going.
There's no other way about it.
You guys must be fans of GB News. Do you watch GB?
Yeah, we have a little watch.
I love Neil Oliver.
Me too.
He's just fantastic. He used to work on the BBC, ironically, but if anyone's listening to this, please listen to GB News. It's about the only place you'll get. It's not absolutely 100% perfect, but then what channel is? But it's the only channel that's actually challenging anything, including the jib jabs, the net zero agenda, and all that kind of thing. Neil Oliver said that something his wife said was very poignant and stuck with him. The green agenda is not really about making everything green. It's more about going without.
Yes, 100%.
About going without. Is cutting things from your so when you get these kind of like when they talk about net zero and how wonderful net zero is, have zero carbon and everything, okay, so what are you going to fill it with? And there's no real answer to that.
No. Talk radio is challenging that in a big way. Talk radio and talk TV. That's really worth a watch.
Good.
And also, whilst we're talking about alternative media, there's UK Column News.
That's well.
You can find on. They're not on YouTube anymore because they were one of the first independent media broadcasters, if you like. They're based in Plymouth, ironically.
I've seen that.
Based in Plymouth, and they had an interview with a lady whose husband had suffered from a certain illness, syndrome, as it were, that prevented him from walking not long after having medical interventions. And it was one of the first reports that came out. And because they were just having an interview about it, this is what my husband is suffering. He can barely walk, within 2 days of having this medical intervention. And so YouTube took a disliking to it and said that, they're not telling the truth or whatever claim they made. And they shut down their YouTube channel. So now you can find, you can go to the UK Column News website, or you can go to Rumble and search UK Column News there. And they usually do a broadcast around lunchtimes, but you can also catch it up on the internet. But they're Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I believe, and they have various people there. One of the guys is actually American. Well, there are two Americans that come on. One is a more recent guy called Mark West, I think his name is, and he had actually recently gone to a thing in America, like a big convention called the Red Pill Expo, which is worth checking out. Read about it on their website. But from what I understand, it's basically like a big convention of people like us that would all get together, might be spiritually aware people that reject this kind of society that's being imposed upon us. They reject certain medical interventions. They reject the narrative, and they're looking under the bonnet of these things and trying to dig deep and find out what's going on. So you find lots of speakers there telling you about what's really happening in China, what is the cause of China's, how come China's expanded so quickly, and it's through the banks that have all got this agreement, that we don't know about, and they're funding this and funding that, and they're going to crash the economy, etc., etc., etc. So check out also, everybody, the Red Pill Expo in the United States. I believe they had like a summer conference. They might have smaller conferences maybe around that country, I don't know, but maybe largely, there's the new spreads of the Red Pill Expo. It might start ending up over here because it's been exposed to us through the UK Column News, and who knows, they might start organizing something like that. Maybe we'll be involved in it in some way in the future, who knows. Worth checking out Red Pill Expo on the internet as well. So we're coming up to a close soon in the next 5 minutes. So where do we see ourselves going in the next 5-10 years, Jayne and Mark, with this? What have you got any psychic predictions or anything that's been shed light to you on what's going to happen?
I just want to kind of go back to where we started, if I can, just to sort of finish off what I was saying, because I'm just thinking back what I said. I'm very aware there's lots of different souls that are awake at the time. There is a place for the warriors. There is a place for the researchers. There's a place for the fighters. Personally, where I sit, I'm no good at any of them roles, so I'm going to sit and hold the as much goodness as I can and help people that way. But everybody's out on the streets making a noise. Fair play to them. That's what their soul come to do. I'm just trying to say, like, my soul's tried it. It's not for me. It makes me poorly. I've got to hold the light. And any advice I could give is when we're being pulled into the fear or we're getting depressed, have 2 weeks off, align yourself. Spirit have shown me we can focus on all that's bad in the world, or we can go all love and light and say everything's wonderful. Neither of those does us any good. We've got to stay as spiritual people in the middle lane. We must. This is a war for our minds, our souls, and our this is spiritual warfare. This is the final battle. So although go and fight, go shout, I've done my fair share. I know that I work best. I help people best when I'm out of the fear zone and just doing my thing here.
I agree.
I'll tell you what I do as a kind of almost a therapeutic thing that also helps people. My view is I'm a graphic designer and I do Photoshop quite a lot, and I create a lot of memes.
Brilliant.
and my thing is to undermine the bullshit system with memes, and I try and join as many groups as I can and spread stuff as many as I can. So for instance, like, you know, the people with the podiums at number 10 giving all their things, I will just change the text for like
brilliant
blah 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 blah, and I just spread those around. I want to, I call it a psyop, you know, which is psychological operation. My job, I think, is a psyop to try and undermine and get normal everyday people to question, are you really being told the truth?
Spot on.
Or if I can spark something that makes people think, maybe I'm being manipulated, that has a snowball effect. So
absolutely.
That's why I do it.
So look, if we, and this has been my point in all of this, is connect to your soul, because your soul will guide you through it and down the path that's right for you. So, you know, Jayne's holding the light, you're doing memes. I guess what I'm doing is really helping people to connect to their own soul so that they can feel for themselves, should they have any interventions. Are they going to be okay? Do they need to take a supplement? I'm helping people to connect to their souls in my work all the time, every day, all day, in my teaching, everything. And that's what I can offer, because it's by being connected to your soul that you'll get through this and you'll be all right in whatever comes next.
Yes. You will. You've got to keep connected to your soul. That's what they're trying to sever. That is exactly what they're trying to sever it, and that's what, in my opinion, that does.
And I want to just make the point that when I say soul, I don't mean spirit. So I'm not saying connect to your dead granny. I'm talking about your own soul
essence.
You know, because for all we know, Granny may have been, you know, queuing up for some treatment. We don't. This is not a time to be going to Granny for advice on this. We need to go to our own soul. You know.
Which is exactly the opposite of transhumanism. Transhumanism wants to remove the soul and put in science.
That's what I do. That's what I think my work is about.
But be careful. We know by now that where we put our energy is what materializes on the earth plane. We know that to be true. If I sit and think long enough, I can give myself a headache if that's my intention. So as much as we're outraged and angry, there also has to be a period of, we need to bring in, it sounds so corny, but it's true. We almost need to bring in the balance as well. Love for ourselves. Have a night off it sometimes.
Absolutely.
Because we can drive ourselves mad with this stuff. That's what it's intended for.
It's interesting having a night off. I'll repeat this story. I said it last month, but for those that haven't known this story, I think it's worth repeating as you guys are here anyway, because you haven't heard it. Have a night off. There's a guy that we interviewed about a year and a half ago. Forget his name, Robert, I think. And he told us a very interesting story. He knows a bus driver, very kind of basic, down to earth, conventional job, but the guy is actually very, very psychic and mediumistic, you know. So when I've done talks about this bus driver, I call him Reg Farney, because it's like out on the buses, and people can identify with that in the UK anyway, if you're a certain age like me, you know. But anyway, this guy, he's having contact with spirit all the time, and one of the things that's happened to him is that he was laying in his bed going to sleep, and he was woken up by spirits or someone saying, go downstairs. They're being really imperative. You must go downstairs to the living room. And he just said, oh, no, I want to go to sleep. And they said, no, please go downstairs. There's something really important. So the guy reluctantly got out of bed, went downstairs. And as he went downstairs, he noticed his living room door was open and there was a blue light coming from the living room. And he thought, did I forget to draw the curtains? You know, is there like a street lamp shining into my living room? So he went into the living room, And the source of this blue light was 3 huge, tall, humanoid beings in his living room. 2 were sitting on the sofa. The other one was standing up. He described them as almost like wizards, if you like, long gowns, wearing staffs, long beards, long hair. So I'm thinking something like Gandalf. That's the kind of thing I got in my head.
Yeah.
And they said, thank you for coming downstairs. We've got something to tell you, very important. And this was probably going about maybe 2 to 3 years ago now, when this possibly occurred. And they said, things are going to get really bad for everybody. He says, but you're not to worry about other people. They said to him, just be concerned with yourself. Don't worry about other people. Don't take on other people's problems.
Yes.
And they said, pay attention to America, because whatever happens in America will affect this country. So they're also talking geographically quite.
Yeah.
And they said, but just don't concern yourself, don't worry too much about other people. And whether these people vanish or not, I don't know how that wraps itself up in the end. But apparently this spirit, the spokesperson of this trio, was known as Barnabas. And apparently he's something to do with UFOs, flying saucers, aliens, that kind of thing. So I'm told, rather than a conventional spirit or spirit guide, but spiritual nevertheless, I guess. And anyway, maybe a year later, I think the illness hit us, the COVID from China. And this guy was apparently still getting worried, getting involved in people's problems. And he was walking through his hallway, and out of the living room came this tall being again, like a year later. Wow. And he said, I've told you not to get involved in people's problems. You're getting yourself too worried about people's problems. And he put his arms around him with his cloak and gave him a great big kind of bear hug. And then this guy just vanished. And the guy thought, whoa, that was weird. So he went into the kitchen to get a cup of tea, but he went and caught himself on something. He realized that somehow he was wearing this guy's cloak on the door handle or something as he went in to get himself a cup of tea or something. So, but I was thinking, well, where is this cloak, this spiritual cloak? I want to see it if it's still around, or did it slowly fade away or be by itself? But basically the message was, the important thing was that they seem to be aware that things are going to get bad, and that's why they told this guy to, don't get too involved. But they obviously give them the heads up on this sort of thing, so they're definitely aware that something's in the air, as it were.
This is massive. I mean, this has been predicted since time began, really, hasn't it? This is I call it the final battle between God and Satan. And everything else goes in. It's already playing out. We can devote our lives to every minute detail of this and get very poorly and be very low vibrational, or we can say, I see what's going on, I'm having no part of it, I'll make my decisions when the time comes, and I'm going to live a good life. That's what they don't want. They don't want joy, they don't want laughter, they can't do anything with it, they don't relate to it. I believe they're not even of our DNA, but that's a whole nother subject.
I don't even think they're human at the
nor do I, Andrew, nor do I. They couldn't behave like this if they were. Hence why they're so, again, we're going off tangent. Spirit, we will be looked after if when we start to look after ourselves and raise our consciousness above this shit show we're being played out. I call it a movie, and it's a crap movie. It's boring. Boring.
It is a shit movie.
I'm going to go out to the foyer where the sweets
are. I'll go. I can't do with this no more.
Okay, so we're drawing to a close here now. So obviously you do your mediumistic demonstrations and readings for people. So maybe if people want to find out more about you, you've got a few things you can tell us about, haven't you? So what's the first group?
My website, maybe first protocol, is www.JayneHartshorn, james.com. I've got a Jayne Hartshorn page on Facebook. Mark can do his.
Okay, so mine's markhartshorn.co.uk. That's the website, and there's a Facebook page called Soulful Connections. You can look at that.
And then just after Christmas, we invented Heart Hub, where we tried to get spiritual and personal development all under one roof, and we run that via YouTube. There is a Facebook page called Heart Hub, HART-HUB, and there's plenty of free content on YouTube. Is there a better plug than that, Mark, for Heart Hub? Or
no, I think probably the Facebook page is good, isn't it? And then
it'll divert people
from there. You'll find links to our material on YouTube.
Okay,
excellent.
And you still run a psychic developing circle, Jayne?
I do. I'm going to restart it again in the new year, not this year. So that's where I literally teach people how to develop their own psychic and mediumistic abilities if they fancy it. So all very easy going. I'm quite a patient teacher. I teach it from scratch.
And that's in Dorchester.
It is, yeah.
Dorchester in Dorset in the UK for anyone that's in that area, and that'd be on a Thursday evening. Was it Thursday evening?
It was a Thursday evening. It was, yeah, half seven.
Presumably the same place where you do the.
It will be when I arrange it, but I haven't got anything down on paper yet.
Okay, so stay for those people. Get onto Facebook, go to Hearts Hub, and Jayne will put the details out there when you start.
I definitely will. I definitely will.
Any of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much indeed, Mark and Jayne, for joining us. It's been fascinating 2 hours. We've covered a lot of stuff there to get our teeth into, and
it's nice to have an intelligent conversation, isn't it? It's great.
Intelligent conversation. It's refreshing to listen to people with a sympathetic ear like ourselves. I hope, anyway, and likewise to go back to that sort of thing. We find it incredibly frustrating when we venture out into the world and everyone's sort of going down that narrow band of thinking, the sheep pen sort of style of thinking. But it's kind of refreshing here on the Paranormal Peep Show that we are talking about alternative things, not just spiritual stuff, but alternative ways of looking at things. But I suppose I better say officially for the powers that be, please check the World Health Organization for all your latest medical updates, everybody. And pay attention to the advice of that. I'm sure that that's the most important thing that everybody should be listening to.
Yeah, they'll look after you. No vested interest whatsoever.
Of course.
On that note, I've got a few final words as well. I want to appeal to all of those people listening to this that have got where what we're talking about resonates with them, and all the people who realise that we are in a spiritual battle and a spiritual warfare. And I want to say that we need to approach this from almost a Shaolin monk perspective. The Shaolin monks are the monks in China who basically created Kung Fu hundreds of years ago, possibly thousands of years ago. And they wanted to just be left alone, and they're into peace, and they're into meditation, and they're into doing things peacefully, but also strength. The reason Kung Fu was developed was because they were originally almost annihilated through war, through tribes attacking them. Only a few of them survived, and they then created Kung Fu to defend themselves. We are in that same situation as humanity. So we just, as libertarians, we just want to be left alone. But unfortunately, we have a very dark, very evil force that wants to wipe us out. So for the people that are listening, I want you to see if you can work out for yourself what you can do to undermine the lies that we're being told, and how we might be able to take down the darkness in a non-violent and legal way. So I know that there are good and bad in all walks of life, whether it's the military, the police, the secret services, the CIA, MI5, MI6, whatever. There are good and bad in everything. And I know there will be some good people, and I want to basically speak out to the good people in the police and the military and the secret services. Do you want your children and grandchildren to grow up in an absolute hellhole, a communist, fascist, social credit system hellhole, or do you want people to grow up in freedom and liberty? That's the choice that you've got. If you're listening to this, can you please think of ways, because we can't do that, we're not in those circles, to take down the darkness. There are people who need arresting. There are files that need being brought to court of people that want to kill us. Have a little think, search your soul. I know your mortgage might be on the line. I know your reputation might be on the line, and I know your credibility, etc., might be on the line, but we are really in a do or die situation. Can you please do something about it? And that's all I want to say on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wise words indeed. Thanks, Andy. Right. Well, thank you very much once again. Catch us next month on the Paranormal Peep Show. Thanks to our guests, Mark and Jayne, once more. Catch us next month on the Paranormal Peep Show on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And we're on Spreaker, we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, and many other audio platforms that I can think of. But they're the ones that come to mind. So hopefully you've taken away some bits of information here that might be worth pondering on, as it were, in part 1 and part 2. Thanks very much indeed for listening, and we'll see you next month. Bye bye now.
Take care. you.